Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion and the Poobah Fraser himself, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan.
Hey, man, what's going on?
I don't have my glasses on. That's what's going on. Like, I was...
I'm gonna really slow things down today, everybody. Sorry.
No, I mean, once we get into it, it'll be like...
everything.
It'll be like that episode where we had blindfolds on. I did not realize how bad my eyes are until trying to look at this computer screen without glasses.
Dev, we got a problem.
Oh no, we got a problem. Yo, I'll solve it. Unless it's where are my glasses.
I don't know if you can solve this one. I pretty much solved it for myself, and now only time will really be the true self. I think, I made a meatball mistake, Dev.
You made a meatball mistake? What does that even mean?
I made a meatball mistake, Dev. God, I was hungry, right? So, so I was very, very hungry, and it was very, very late at night, right? And I was just like, I need something, and there's nothing in this house. I have to order. I'm trying to limit how much I interact with DoorDash nowadays, right? Like with all of the shit that we've learned over the last few years about the ways that they, treat people and the weird ways that they skirt various laws and shit. It's not a good scene, right? Also, not to mention, I know it's a big thing on the internet, to talk about added fees and shit and how that doubles the price of your stuff. That sucks, right? I will say that that's not too bad out here. I don't really experience that, but the current atmosphere around DoorDash, right? So I try not to do that as much as I can. But I had to succumb because it was the only option out here. Because at a certain time of night, I don't know what it is with the Mormons. They just shut everything down at 9 o'clock. Even restaurants and stuff, they're just nah, you should be in bed by now. It's but some of us aren't though. So I order out. The only two places that I have an option for are Domino's or Marco's Pizza. Both franchise pizza joints. Not exactly going to be anything fun or exciting, but what the hell. And I would do Domino's all the time, and I just thought, what the fuck? I'll do Marco's, right? That was the first mistake.
Mistake number one: choosing Marco's over Domino's.
Because the Marco's out here has only just recently opened, and when I say recently, I mean kind of mid-COVID. They were we're gonna build a Marco's, and everybody was now's not the time, guys. And sure enough, it's never quite been able to recover from that. So they close at weird hours sometimes. People working in there will just completely just fuck up your food. This is not new, but I just figured it's just going to be a meatball sandwich. It's literally just going to be meatball sauce in bread. Bring it to me. The other thing is that the Marco's is literally down the hill from me, right? So I even debated. I was it's only 11 o'clock at night. I could probably walk down there, right? It's just the problem again out here is no sidewalks, no lights, right? So I was just nah, I'm not doing that.
You have a car, right? I just have to ask if you have a car. But were you in a position where driving was not smart?
Well, I don't have it. We haven't quite talked about this, but I don't have a vehicle right now because somebody took it upon themselves on the weekend of the 4th of July to put a rock right through the back window of my car.
Happy America.
Yeah, there's not much more to the story than that, which is probably why we haven't really talked about it, because it's not like I saw it. It's not like I ran down the street after some punk kids or something. Nope, came home and there was a big old just hole in my back window. But anyway, yeah, so I don't have a vehicle right now to answer that question. So I'm just I'm just gonna order this sandwich, whatever. It was, when I say it's the worst sandwich I've ever eaten, I don't mean to imply that no food's ever got me sick or anything like that. I've definitely had worse after experiences with ordered out food. But it was the most poorly constructed sandwich I've ever had. And again, 3 ingredients: sauce, meatballs, bread. That's all I ordered. I sometimes get green peppers, and I didn't even dare this time because they always forget at this place. So I was just no, this is it. First of all, they gave me a loaf of bread. I've never gotten that before. I asked for a large, to be fair, but this was so big it didn't fit in a container.
Hold on. Before we go further with this story, have you ordered a meatball sandwich from Marco's before?
Yes, I have
Okay,
ordered sandwiches from them in the past. Although I will say not this particular Marco's, which is I
gotcha.
think an important fact. But yeah, no, I've ordered sandwich. No, Marco's was actually the standard takeout in Ohio. I like at least the area that I was in, because like there were Domino's and Pizza Huts and stuff like that, but they were honestly more expensive. Marco's like used to give you all sorts of like student deals and shit. We get like buckets of wings for like $5 and stuff. No, so no,
I
no,
only
no.
asked because I've never been to a Marcos, so I don't know what the expectation is. So
I
you're
mean,
going in there
it's
with
like you're
expectation.
it's like ordering a meatball sub from Domino's. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're not expecting, again, it's not going to be some type of life-changing experience where they do something real special with the meatballs. They're like they're supposed to be like grocery store meatballs thrown in some of their pizza sauce, thrown onto a loaf of bread and handed to you, right? But this thing came and it's this huge loaf of bread, right? And then on top of that, they when I say meatball and I said grocery store meatball, you get an idea. They're not huge, right? These weren't even meatballs. These were like meat pellets. I had a meat pellet sandwich. And there was only like, it was like somebody went into a can of Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs, pulled out all of the spaghetti, and then dumped what was left onto some bread and handed it to me. Because then the amount of sauce, it was ridiculous. It was so much sauce that it was starting to deteriorate the cardboard container that they handed it to me in, that was already having trouble shutting because of how much bread was in there. They basically handed me like tomato soup with some bread sticking out of it, and every now and then there was a little meat pellet for me to chew on. I was just like, this is the weirdest fucking experience of my goddamn life. So it was just so I'm working off of that as we record today.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was not expecting that. I just I don't want to say you threw me off, because you haven't thrown me off. What's thrown me off is my lack of glasses, in addition to that story that you just told, that like I will never order that style of sandwich again, which
Right.
not 100% true. The fact of the matter is I will get a meatball sub from Subway, but like that is the absolute, there's so many other things at Subway that I would rather get. But the reason behind all of that is that when I was working for Bob Dylan, and we performed, and he was performing at Cooperstown, so we had to build the stage at Cooperstown. For dinner, we went to a little hole-in-the-wall pizza place that I'm sure is like probably the best pizza place in Cooperstown, right? And it's a little family-owned, whatever. And I get a veal Parmesan grinder, and I'm thinking this is gonna be the reward at the end of. We had worked in Poughkeepsie the night before. They ended up saying, we're not booking you hotel rooms. So to sleep, we went and saw Accepted and slept in the aisles of the theater. Not the aisles, the rows of the theater.
But,
We each
like,
sat in a separate
how-
row.
But how could they justify not getting you guys hotel room? Sorry, that's not the point of the story. Keep going.
Because we're not staying overnight. We have to drive through the night in order to start setting up in Cooperstown.
They got rules against that shit.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do, but they have rules against what they did for us anyway, which we were local overhire to begin with, that they brought to multiple locations. And not like within the rules of what local overhire is supposed to be.
Right.
Like
yeah.
there's a radius for who local overhire can be in addition to everything. Somebody got rich off of that, and it was not us. But I ate that veal Parmesan sandwich, and then we tried to like sleep in the Toyota. It was a Camry. It was a Toyota Camry that four of us had ended up riding to Cooperstown in through the night. And then again, we don't have a hotel for you. We just have this rec center basement, and we only have it until 4 p.m. Yeah, like they screwed us. And that sandwich didn't sit well in my stomach. That veal Parmesan sandwich. It was a delicious sandwich. Tasted really good. But then we go to start breaking down the stage at midnight, and I threw up all over the grass at the Cooperstown field. Now let me tell you about, that's like a very, Cooperstown is the Baseball Hall of Fame. We're across from the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's a pretty significant field into like what baseball is, to the fact that in order to move the stage in, our first task was laying down a 2x4, like planks, the entire coverage of that baseball field so that nothing would get damaged by the equipment that we were there to install. And because we got there early, we got the extra job of doing that before running electric on a baseball field. But yeah, so then
I'm glad to know that your puke just landed on the 2x4.
Oh no! I managed to find the one piece of grass that was still exposed, and the head looked at me and he's like, "Come here. All right, you got food poisoning. You gotta get going." And I'm like, "All right, I'm with other people on their ride," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm signing you all off. You guys can just get out of here," and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But we still got paid. That was the other thing. I don't know why we still got paid for the work, but I haven't eaten an Italian...
Probably so that you wouldn't tell anybody what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, that it was this horrible situation. Yeah, at the end of the day, I have never eaten an Italian grinder again. So I would never even be in a scenario to have a loaf of bread with meat pellet sandwich. You poor bastard. I'm so sorry.
No, that is not where I'm at in life. If I can get my hands on a good meatball sub, I will, right? Like, I will always and forever remember this place that I landed in Atlantic City, right? Like, I had just landed out there for a conference. It was super late at night, again, needing food, but lo and behold, a city where the restaurants don't just fucking close at 9. So we were out at like 11 and we had options, and everybody was like, where are we gonna go? Where are we gonna go? And I was like, look over at this like little like Italian like family owned restaurant, like you mentioned, but like a bar. Like, that's the other thing, is it was mostly a bar, and I was like, we're going there. First of all, the World Series was on, and we're like, let's go catch the end of the game and get ourselves some food, right? Perfect. I ordered a meatball sub from them, and they were like, do you want a meatball sub, or do you want the house special meatball sub? And I was like, there's a difference. They said, yeah, these ones are homemade, and these are the same ones that you get on the meatball plate. And I was like, well, I want that one. Whatever
why wouldn't you want that one?
Yeah. The meatballs were the size of my goddamn head, and they were only 3 of them, but it still was a foot-long sandwich because they cut them in half and layered them. And I was just like, this is amazing. And sure, it was one of the best meatball subs I've ever had in my life. Anyway,
that's the way to serve a meatball sub, just for the record. Like, just putting balls in bread is not structurally sound. Cutting a meatball in half and then laying it next to each other, Belamonte.
And you like tessellated perfectly. No, there is a good way to have this style of sandwich, and I just didn't experience it last night. But anyway,
I thought you were going to say you had heartburn from the sandwich.
Well, we're not even. Look, everything gives me heartburn. That's not. Yes, that I am consistently in a state of heartburn. That is true of any episode of the show you've ever listened to. So that's nothing new.
Well then, Origins of Siegen 2, Tears of the Say Report. Which is what we're really here to talk about today. This is supposed to be our big video game episode. I'm excited to do it. Before we go there, I mean, anything else on the sandwich, Siegen? I appreciate you sharing.
No, there was nothing else on the sandwich. It was really just the sloppy sauce.
I'm sorry. That's just sad. Before we talk video games, and we're going to talk... I've been gaming out of my mind this week. I know Siegen's been gaming out of his mind this week. We just did Street Fighter 6 last week, but that was before... We're like, in 2 weeks, we're finally going to go spoiler town on Tears of the Kingdom. Because Siegen was ready to finish it. I had already left it in the dust. And I have thoughts about things that happened in the game that I'd like to discuss with someone else I know who has completed the game. But we have to address an elephant that's in the room. And that is the fact that we are cursed to live in interesting times, Siegen.
Yeah.
Because in addition to the writers being on strike, now SAG-AFTRA has gone on strike.
We'd be remiss if we did that.
I feel like we have to touch on it. I don't know what I want to say. I don't... Obviously, everybody deserves fair compensation for the job that they do. And these residual check videos that have been circulating around are really disheartening. Like $27 for someone who is in Orange is the New Black. That's a crazy number to see. Now, granted, they got paid up front, but that's neither here nor there. Like, compensation should be fair. And the other thing that we're seeing, and what now has been confirmed, is a lot of those shows that were taken off of streaming was done so that even those $27 residual payments would be no more.
Right. Well, right. Like the idea that a show, because this is where this kind of goes back to an issue that I have that we've talked about a few times with the concept of the word cancellation. Right. And the way that word kind of gets bandied about a lot by fans and by people in the industry about what's going on, when that isn't quite exactly, that's not the best way to describe it. It's a good way to rile up a fan base when you say that a show has been canceled versus we did not renew / we are not, the contract is up, right? Like there's this stuff where like people talk about like Netflix canceling like Arrow, and it's like, well, they don't own Arrow, or Riverdale is the bigger one, right? Where everybody's just like, man, that Netflix is the way that they do that Riverdale dirty, and it's like, they have nothing to do with the creation of that show, guys. If CW doesn't renew a contract with them to put the new season up, they don't renew that season. Now, I'm sure Netflix would love to continue to carry Riverdale, considering all the heat it catches, but like that's not always in their, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're just licensing out something made by someone else.
Right. And again, that's just one example of the various ways in which people talk about this stuff. But it has painted a very specific picture of the ways that this shit works. And what we are learning through the writers' strike and now through the screen actors' strike, right, is we're starting to see how truly complicated everything behind the scenes really is. And it's like it's the same story that we always get. It's somebody out there who is writing these contracts, purposely creating all of these weird like variations and different wordings and legalese that goes into this shit so that they can pull shit like, yeah, you were promised this certain amount of money up front with this idea that you'd get residuals on the back end if it was performing in a certain way. But we've written so many fucking loopholes into the ways in which we get to dictate what that performance looks like that like you're never going to see that second half of that money. Right. And like that's like what was the big one you and I were discussing? We might have even mentioned it last week about the guy that Men in Black. Right?
Men in Black is the
where Men in
one.
Black is still considered like in the like in the red, like, right, like.
I think
like
Shrek is another one that came out as like it made a bunch of money, and now you don't get
that one?
Shrek 2. One of the Shreks somebody pointed to as the same thing.
The most successful animated series of all time. Like that is the thing that gets bandied about that film. And then we find out that the way that DreamWorks writes it down on paper, they act like it was a huge money loss for them.
Yeah. And you throw a rock at Hollywood, you're going to hit a story about even like smaller stuff that like this has to have made back its $10 million budget. What do you mean no one is getting the back end part of the deal? Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. It really is. But I don't know. I can't believe they're still on strike is like the truest of it all. What that really means to me is that the studios have just been preparing for this, which was my biggest fear. Like, I think I mentioned it a year ago that it's like, kind of feels like the studios are getting ready to have the strike with the way that they're like making sure there's new content all the time instead of just during what was the usual TV seasons, how they're splitting up seasons that are done, right? Like,
I think it's giving them a little too much credit. I think for sure they've definitely tried to strike proof themselves through various things because of what happened over the last various strikes that we've seen. Like, they'd be stupid to not try and correct some things that they got, caught with their pants down on last time to not have that happen again. Sure. I don't think that they knew that there was a specific strike coming. I don't think that they were aiming and targeting like anything in that regard. I think some of it is sheer dumb luck, just the way that the market has shook out over the last few years and the ways that streaming blew up. I mean, if any of them were preparing for a strike by putting more stuff on streaming, they've been doing it so fucking reluctantly. I mean, I can't believe that, considering how much of a pain in the ass it's been to get half of these people on board with the idea of like, hey, maybe we don't need to stick to a cable schedule anymore. The ways that shows are made and the idea that they're released in bulk as opposed to like episode per week and stuff like those conversations have been so back and forth that I cannot believe anybody out there was using it as a tactic to prepare for this. I think they just lucked out in some regards and not in others. Like one of the things you have to consider is that like people are dropping stuff left and right now, but in 3 months we're gonna start running out of content, and they're not gonna have that thing to depend on, that pre-made thing to depend on. Like an upfront reward, but not a very good long-term solution. Because like without having stuff in the hopper to like release later, like they're completely screwed now. And I think that's where the studio is going to get their ass bit, is that if this goes on as long as, like, even the hard comment that guy made about, like, well, if this goes on to December, some of them will lose their houses, and what can be done. I don't think you can afford for this to go on to December, sir. Like really.
I
Like,
think he said
we're seeing.
October, but
Well,
still.
there was something going around about Decembers and Christmases and things
Okay.
like that. So I may be conflating two different stories.
Yeah.
That doesn't change the
Oh, it doesn't
sentiment and how
change
shitty
the
it
message
is.
behind it.
It doesn't change how fucking vile the comment was. And this idea that somebody out there even has the balls to say that, and then 2 days later, seeing all this shit about the cast for Oppenheimer is like not going to do the press tour because they're standing with SAG right now. So like, oh shit, one of the biggest movies of the year, and your entire cast is saying that they're not going to go out there and promote the film. And like, not that there's anywhere to promote it right now, right? With no late night shows to go on and stuff like that, right? Like, maybe there could do some rounds on the YouTube stuff, except all of those people, or half of those people, are tied up in this shit with the Writers Guild and stuff. So there's a lot more holes in this plan than I think that the studio recognizes right now, and we'd be stupid to not see them ourselves. I mean, like, this is not going to go the way that the studios seem to be behaving like they think it's going to right now. And that's the thing that's really got me, is the studios having the nerve to say shit like some people might lose their homes and that's not our problem, and like some people, and then studios just blatantly just dropping shit left and right. Like, I mean, I can't believe we haven't heard somebody say we're going to hold it back on this release so that, for some crazy excuse, but we would know, well, this is because you don't know how long this strike is going to go on and you want something to be able to put out at the end of August, right? We haven't heard any of that yet, and that's wild.
I agree. The All-Star game, the MLB All-Star game, happened this past week, and during the game, they premiered so many trailers, and we've discussed this before. They're doing that. Those deals would have had to have been put together beforehand, right? It's not the day of, and you're like, oh, they're talking about going on strike. Let's call up the MLB and see if we can buy some airtime. Airtime should have been sold and figured out before the MLB All-Star game is played. Am I wrong in thinking that way?
Sure. I will say that there's probably been some people that have been pumping more money into A, B, or C, like, since the strike started. I think we have seen an uptick in certain things getting promoted over other things.
Right, but there were, like, I saw the first Blue Beetle, like, full-on trailer and things like that during
something like the premiere of the Blue Beetle trailer was, yes, probably something in the cards from long ago.
And people looked at it as they're going to try to push everything they can tonight before the strike starts, and I'm like, yeah, but that seems strange, because like those movies, if they're smart, if they're not movies that are coming out like pre-October, I would try to like reel them in and not release those films or promise a release of those films. Am I crazy in thinking that way? Like,
no, I don't think so. I think the studios are just overconfident about what they're going to be able to get away with. But again, I don't know how they can be when you look at the ways that like Indiana Jones couldn't even perform, right? Like I don't know where this overconfidence is coming from, because I mean, I have to think that they were really hoping for a huge bounce back after COVID. That I think that there were just some people in the industry that just assumed that once all of this blows over, like, people are going to come back to the theater in droves, and we're just not seeing that happen, which is something that we have talked about a few times now. But like, it's just not happening, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. But the ways that these studios are behaving, and in some ways the ways that the system was set up to kind of force them to have to behave, right? Like, some of these companies are behaving this way because if they don't survive the year, right?
Yeah.
And so like, it sucks that they've put themselves up on such a flimsy pedestal, because like, I do want product to be out there, right? And I don't want any movie out there to fall on its face without getting its opportunity, right? Like, but I just, this is I think a real symptom of the bloat that we saw before COVID, and then COVID coming along and teaching the audience that, hey, you don't have to participate in this fucking system, and then like now the studios don't know what to do because they were so dependent on the ways in which films were made and released pre-COVID, and they just cannot seem to figure out any way to change that now.
Yeah, I remember we took my father out for his birthday this past week, and while we're eating, I told him, I have tickets to go see Oppenheimer and Barbie, and then like the latest one I have now is I was able to get into the pre-screen fan event for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which I'm very excited about because it's the only time to see it after like 5 p.m. They're not doing like nighttime showings of that movie, which... That's interesting. I mean, granted, we're still almost a month out from the release of that film, but all of the like show times that are available are like before 5 p.m.
Well, yeah, they're during work hours for reviewers, my dude. Like, that's what it is. Anybody out there that's going to be going to pre-screenings of that movie?
No, I'm not talking. The pre-screenings are the ones that are happening later. I mean, when it releases on August 2nd, there's nothing after 5 p.m. They're like specifically targeting kids who are out of school, and kids are not going to go to the movies later in the day.
That is wild because that's just not how it works out here.
It's not how it works here either. And also, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and if you've seen anything about the movie, it seems like it's all about the nostalgia. Like every single mutant has been shown on a poster for this movie. Like, granted, updated new models of it, but like Wingnut has a poster for Mutants Mayhem. They know who they're trying to appeal to with this movie. So then for like adults who probably work during the day to not have showtimes available for them, the target audience, also seems crazy for me. Imagine if they did that for Mario. You wouldn't have made $1 billion, Mario.
Yeah, no, this is the first that I'm hearing that they're not doing. Like...
It's specifically at the theaters local to me, and again, maybe once it actually comes to being released, it'll change. But I was surprised when I'm like, I want to get...
I'm looking at 6:30, 9:10, 10 p.m., 9:40. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on in Providence because that's not going on out this way.
I have no idea. It's the weirdest thing to me. Because I'm like, I'll get tickets to see it the day it comes out. And I'm like, well, I don't want to take that day off. I don't want to take a Wednesday off. But if I want to see it the day it comes out, my only options are in the middle of the day. Which is why I sought out and tried to get invited into a fan event. And I was able to do it. But the main story of this, going back to it, is my father was like, when are you going to stop doing that? Because he knows that I buy 3 tickets for every movie so that I have like a little cushion. So that I don't have to. There's no chance of somebody sitting next to me. Is the truth of it, and I'm like, I don't know, sir, but I'm not seeing movies like I used to. If I was buying 3 movie tickets for each movie every week, that would be unsustainable. But me looking at movies and being like, I really don't want that to be spoiled for me. I really don't want like to not see that film when it comes out. I want to be able to discuss it. Though again, look what happened with me with Indiana Jones. I thought that was going to be a big talk, and still I have not met another person in real life who has seen that movie. It might just be me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, I will happily go to a 10:30 at night showing of this movie, though, on the day it comes out.
Oh, yeah. If it were available, I would have done it. I'm seeing Barbie at 10:15 because it's the only time to see it in, like, big projection. Because Oppenheimer has all the other ones booked. And I'm like, it's cool that they're doing a Barbie in the larger projection style. I will wait until 10:15 to see that. That's cool to me.
Yeah, no, man.
Like, I don't know. But then the other question is, with this strike, I mean, should we not go see the movies? Like, how are we supposed to act as non-actors?
Yeah, I think, and there's probably people out there that have discussed this, right? Like, I think there is information out there that's available to you. I always kind of, it is not the only answer to this question, but the answer that I have always found myself is that if the product is out there and complete, at that point, not participating in it is is something where you're like, you're also not taking in the art that was created. Now, if you can figure out various ways to do it that can limit how much that money goes back to the studio, like that is something that I think should be encouraged. You know, like if you're able to, it's like if you're able to go to like a filmmaker's event of some kind, if you're able to go and get the movie directly from them through like sometimes I think it's better to buy it through like Google than it is any other service, like that kind of thing, because of the ways that people get money on the back end and where the money goes, right? Like because like buying something through Prime is kind of horrendous because of the amount of money that goes first to Amazon before it ever actually goes to the film itself, that kind of thing, right? Or like you're talking about various theaters that you can go to. If you can go to like a local theater, like out here, I have the benefit of a bunch of little smaller like Sundance theaters, right? And if I can go and see Barbie in one of those, which I am like super excited to do because it's a Greta Gerwig film, so they're all over that shit with like Noah Baumbach like helping on the writing, right? So like all of the like Sundance theaters are like, we are definitely showing Barbie, and then there's like one where there's gonna be like a talk back and everything, and like I'll go to one of those events because at least then I know that yeah, like I may be giving some money to this movie, but I'm also giving money to this theater as well, right? Like I mean, you know, ethical consumerism is nothing new. Like with something we've been very like in tune to for
Yeah.
the last like 20 years, and again, there's no right answer to that, but when it comes to this sort of stuff, I always feel like if there is a finished product, then I want to support it. But I am not going to broadcast shit that is like being tinkered with or toyed with. Like I will talk about like facts, like studio canceled this, studios is like reported that. Like I will do that, but like I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, you should go see Oppenheimer. Like in fact, like when it especially when it came to like something like Indiana Jones, I'm a huge proponent of waiting for that movie.
Yeah, no, I again my own
I haven't watched any of Secret War yet because I was
Secret
kind of thinking about
Invasion,
getting
very different
Secret
things.
Invasion. Yeah, but like I haven't touched that show yet because in my like in that moment where I was trying to decide whether I should or shouldn't, like things just kept blowing up worse and worse with the strike, and I've just kind of it's kind of really turned me off to watching it right now.
Yeah.
So I probably won't partake of that, which is something. But that's more because I think I might be canceling a lot of streaming services in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that seems like the best thing. But again, they haven't said anything, right? The only thing I'm hearing from SAG-AFTRA is that the best way to support is to strike yourself, and that's an interesting thought to me. Like, yeah, it's a broken system that we play in, and I get it, but like, you're in a union. There's a reason why you can strike. I can't strike if I just like work at McDonald's and I'm not in a union at McDonald's.
No,
Like,
but I mean, you know, there is also the idea that maybe you can be get the ball rolling on looking into unionization
yeah,
for the business that you're in, which I know is also another dangerous game to play. There, it is ultimately one of those things that everybody has to figure out for themselves, and you have to respect what everybody else's answer is to that question. You just have to, because you don't know the position that they're in. So somebody may choose to give a little bit more leeway in a way that you wouldn't, but you can't hold that against them for because you don't know what their life situation is. And then you might see some people out there that are just way more, you know, like out there about their affiliations with things like unions and stuff than you would ever dare to be. And you just have to just understand where they're coming from. You know, it sucks because the whole point of unionization is the idea of all coming together on a common like ground, right? But that doesn't mean that we then erase like the differences they're in, right? Because like that's the whole idea, is that because everybody leads such different lives, we can come together on this one thing to protect one another, to make sure that we are also protected in those other areas. Like that is the idea, and I think that's part of something that's been really lost over the years in the ways that people have just not been taught about unions. You know, they have this feeling that you join a union and you're joining this like monolith that is then going to just completely disregard the fact that you have your life outside of the union, and that shouldn't happen. Now, that definitely does in some instances, and that's a bad union, right? That you need to recognize that like yes, there can be bad people actors out there and not like bad actors like
no,
SAG, but
no.
like there are bad people within the realm of this world that abuse this system as well, and that is something that should be weeded out. But it is only going to be weeded out by presenting better options for people. The only way that you can get a better union in place is to form one, not to just say no unions. Yeah, no, like you said, this is an easier said than done situation for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, that is also a truly honest answer. Because they can't say to you, "Don't go see my shit," because like, what the hell, man? They spent 3 years of their life slaving over a film, and then literally they're on strike saying we want to be recognized for this film that we slaved over, and your solution to that shouldn't be, well, I'm not going to watch that film, right? That just feels weird. But saying I'm going to take this film in a way that limits the amount of money that goes to the oppressor of the situation, that's an interesting conversation to have. And again, we all have to kind of decide for ourselves what that means.
Yeah. It's it's a heck of a situation. I honestly am happy to see that it happens. I hope that, everything rises. I just don't know. But it's a weird time to be living in, and it would have been weird if we hadn't addressed it. Now, again, I haven't done any research on it. I just know that it's happening. I've seen the things that have been like popping up all over the socials, but that's where I'm at with this. If it continues, then maybe we'll do a deeper dive into it and what it actually means. But now that we're through that, there's one other thing to address, and that is I was an idiot last week. A little bit of a revision. It was pointed out to me by my friend Mark, the one who let me borrow Street Fighter 6, that the 3D version of the Street Fighter Cross Tekken, that never released. I had no idea that never came out.
Oh.
Like, only the 2D fighter came out. The Street Fighter Cross Tekken, not Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Which is...
So there was supposed to be that other one,
yeah,
but it just never released.
Yeah. We're not crazy for thinking that it was a thing that existed, but the way that we were talking about it, I always thought that it had come out and just didn't do well in the wake of how Street Fighter Cross Capcom was received with all of the on-disc DLC. So, like, it was one of those times where, like, a boycott happened. But the boycott happened more on the production side of it, where they're like, well, if people are mad at this game, we should probably not even make it, right?
Yeah.
Which I did not know that. So, sorry for anyone I got their hopes up. The game never released. To fully taking
the way that we were talking about that franchise, this is the ways in which it was...
It was a fuck up.
I don't know if we were getting anybody's hopes up about the idea of being able to play that game. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. But still, it was something that was pointed out to me, and I feel it was worth mentioning. Right? When we got something wrong, I'd like to admit that we got something wrong. So again, if we say something wrong, you can always tell us at the Say Report, and we will address it or try to address it. Which is now is time, Stephen. This is spoilers are happening for Tears of the Kingdom. You have 5 seconds.
I think just like maybe this is the way we roll into this, right? This game has been out now for 2 months, right?
Yes.
It's yeah. So we are at least 8 weeks away from the release of this game. On top of that, like we have both played it to completion and waited.
to then talk about it. Yeah.
So like. At this point, I appreciate that there are people out there that are still deep in the game, people that have only just gotten the game, all of that sort of stuff. We've never not talked about a thing this long before, I think.
Yeah,
We've definitely forgotten to talk about things because, like, they've left the zeitgeist. But this has been so in the zeitgeist and continues to be, and we have just not talked about it.
Yeah.
At least not in any meaningful way.
Well, in a way enough that someone did contact me and say, I'm excited for what you guys are doing, and I want you to let Seijin know that because of his talk about the reward for all shrines, it got me off my ass to go find all of the shrines.
Yeah.
So you inspired somebody.
It is as rewarding as I did to find this item at the end of that run, and again, the ways in which
now we can talk about what the item is. What is the item? I'm not doing it. I'm not going through all the shrines.
So you get the Hero of Hyrule skin. Okay. And it is a skin that both incorporates a large amount of stuff that it's clearly Zonai. It clearly turns you into a Zonai. But on top of that, you're given a lot of adornment that is very well, let me put it this way, very Gerudo, right? Like you can kind of see how it bleeds into the Gerudo and thus Ganon. So it's this really interesting skin where you're clearly Zonai and you're called the first hero of Hyrule. Like it is in the description of it that you are wearing this outfit that makes you appear as the original like conceptual like lore based hero of Hyrule. And elements of it feature those of Ganon, of the Zonai, of the Rito, of the like. It incorporates all of this stuff into one outfit. And what's really interesting about that is that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are probably my favorite Zelda games of all time now, and it's hard for me to kind of separate them from one another because they are so similar. If I had to, I would definitely point to Tears of the Kingdom as the top one of the two of them for me at this point, like just laying all my cards on the table. But one of the big things that I will say that it really is it it has so much that separates it from the rest of all Zelda games to the point where there are people out there that talk about it as like not quite fitting their mold for a Zelda game, right? And I'm sure we'll get into that. One of the big instances of that for me, the closest that these games get to for me for being kind of disconnected from the rest of Zelda lore, is it really was kind of always missing and still is missing that connection of the Triforce. That idea that story-wise, lore-wise, everything that happens, the connection between Ganon, Zelda, and Link as those three elements of the Triforce, and that idea of like courage, wisdom, and power, right? Those are the three ones. Those are the three parts, right? Like that's all in the story, but it is never an explicit thing as much as it is in so many other Zelda games that make Legend of Zelda games. I should be clear about because there are Legend of Zelda games that don't even have Zelda in them sometimes. But that idea that like that connection between them is this story that we're telling, right? This has become so much more about like the story and the history of Hyrule and the idea of hero and adventure and all of that, that it's such a meta concept that it kind of lost this element, this specific element that really tied it into the Zelda lore. It's the same way in which like I never really thought about Mario and collecting stars as being the baseline for Mario games. So it really shifted like everything in Mario 64 when you were going back to these same worlds in order to achieve different goals, in order to achieve stars and stuff. Because I was always very much a Super Mario guy, where like you ran through the levels so that you could get to the end, so that you could get to the boss, so that you could get to Bowser, so that you could save the princess, right? This idea of going back into levels and redoing stuff in different ways and weird ways was there, but not like the key element to the gameplay loop like it became in later Mario games. I feel like we've kind of hit that shift here. Like, I feel like we have really shifted away from the original idea of these three being the baseline for this story that's told time and time and time again, because these two games have kind of given us both an ending to that and a beginning to something new.
I get that, and it's actually sort of where I feel as well, because in the beginning, when Tears of the Kingdom first came out, I found myself comparing it a lot to Super Mario 64. But more the fact of like the collectathon nature of 3D gaming, if that makes any sense. Like the switch from 2D to 3D as the like stage for how the game is set. A lot of 3D games are these collectathons. And Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom really lend themselves to that. In terms of you have to find all of the shrines and
I think the sliding scale is like collectathon to resource management, and I think it tries to find a balance between those two, because collectathons in general usually don't have like an end goal other than like the percentage point, whereas at least in this one there is things like you're collecting all of this shit so that you can dye your clothes, improve your weapons, improve your armor. Like there is an in-game like mechanic that is rewarding you for the collecting, makes it more like a resource management game than just a collectathon, I think.
I can see that. I don't know. I know that I had my mushroom shield from the beginning of the game all the way to the end, and that made me happy.
Right.
Like,
You choosing to not engage with the mechanics though doesn't mean they don't exist, Def. Like
oh no,
like
I'm not.
unlike so like that doesn't just because you picked up a shield once and so you didn't feel the need to collect a bunch of shit to do a different thing. That's great. But
Well, I mean, the big thing for me in this game, in my experience with Tears of the Kingdom, is I never found Hestu. So managing resources sort of became a huge part of how I had to play the game, since I could only hold 4 shields, 6 bows, and 8 weapons the entire time
the first
through.
third of the game, he is just in town. So like you didn't try to find his two. If you had fast traveled to the middle tower and just walked down the steps, Hestu was just on the other side of the fountain for the first third of that game. And then at some point he moves himself to the Korok Forest where he is literally right in the center of the Korok Forest. So like you have to try to not find him.
I mean, I wasn't like actively avoiding him. It was just something that never happened for me. And it's crazy.
Yeah,
It is insane. I admit freely that the fact that like that's part of my Tears of the Kingdom story is that I never found the guy who can increase my inventory size. That's nuts to me.
How much time did you spend in town, or how much time did you spend in the Korok Forest?
I never went to the Korok Forest.
Okay, so again, if you're looking for the biggest Korok in the world and you don't bother to go to the Korok Forest, I feel like that's really, really you not trying to find him.
I mean, I'm like, I'll run into him when I run into him, just like I did the last game. And it turns out that...
Yeah, that's not how Tears of the Kingdom works.
Yeah.
It's a huge shift from Breath of the Wild. You don't... This game does not spoon feed you stuff like Breath of the Wild did. Because I think Breath of the Wild was trying so hard to introduce you to this new world that they had created, this new meta, this new concept, this new way of playing Zelda, that there's a lot of stuff in Breath of the Wild. I mean, like, there's a lot of moments in Breath of the Wild where if you don't know where to go, if you talk to enough characters at some point, they'll all start talking about where you probably should be going next. Because so like if in Breath of the Wild, if you ever like, this is a actual mechanic in the game, if you actually feel like you're kind of getting lost and you're not sure what to do, talk to a couple of NPCs, both important and the like people that you meet on the road. If you just talk to enough people, after a while you'll kind of get the idea, like, man, everybody seems to keep talking about the Gorons, or man, everybody seems to keep talking about the desert, or oh man, like everybody seems to keep talking about the cold. Like then it is implying where you should go. Tears of the Kingdom does not do that. Like, there's so much in Tears of the Kingdom where what they're actually doing is they're throwing you off of whatever you're currently doing. You could be on one side of the map trying to collect all of this shit for one goal, and you talk to somebody and they're like, hey, did you know that if you go to the complete other side of the map, there's a village being attacked by pirates right now? I sure wonder what's going on with them. And you're just like, well, I don't have time for that, but now I know about a village being attacked by pirates, so now I'm going to go do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is... So Tears of the Kingdom, I liked it more than Breath of the Wild. I think one of the reasons why I liked it as much as I did was the fusion of weapons meant that I never felt like I'm in love with this weapon and it's going to break, because I could always kind of refuse it or recreate it very easily. Stuff did not feel as unobtainable in this game.
How is that any different than in Breath of the Wild, when if you lose a weapon you like, you can just go find it where you found it again?
I mean, well, I didn't play that way. I've seen some people's maps of the game where they note all that stuff, and I didn't act that way. I would use until, like, the fused horn on my stick would break, and then I have another one of those horns so I can just fuse and create the weapon again.
Sure. No, the fusing mechanic definitely eased the durability, like, issues, I guess I would say, although I wouldn't call them issues, but like the ways people interacted with the durability mechanic of the first one. And I think that's a conscious decision by them. I think there's a lot of stuff like the climbing mechanic from Breath of the Wild is almost completely negated in this one by one of your straight up powers, the ability to what do they call it? Like
ascend.
Ascend, right? But also on top of that, you're given the frog suit in this one, which didn't exist in Breath of the Wild, which is like if you power that up enough, it completely negates the climbing stuff as well. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of those kinds of what they would call probably quality of life improvements in Tears of the Kingdom. It's just again, it's that idea that like the mechanic existed in Breath of the Wild, you chose not to engage with it because like you find weapons like that all the time, and I don't know how much of it's based off of blood moons, how much of it is based off of time, blah blah blah. But like, if you ever really liked a certain type of weapon, there was probably a way for you to just continue to go back and get that weapon every time yours broke, if you really wanted to in that game.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this game just feels so different to my experience with Breath of the Wild. So then, like, overall, I enjoyed it more. I can say that from the beginning.
And
but
I think Nintendo would like probably was aiming to do that.
Yeah.
Like, let's make a game that catches people from Breath of the Wild, but also seems to catch any of those people that didn't seem to like Breath of the Wild. Like, I think that was definitely a goal in making this one.
right. And it is. And there's some interesting stuff there. What is weird about this one, you say that they kind of like want it to be open. This one felt a little more rigid than Breath of the Wild to me. And the only reason that I say that is as soon as I landed on the ground from the Sky Island, I wanted to explore. But there's a bunch of stuff you can't interact with until you've done a couple of missions. And that was strange to me. Like, until
Really?
you
Like what?
get the glider, you can't turn on any of the other towers. And that seemed weird to me. Like,
I mean, until you get the glider, you can't get shot 20 feet in the air. Yeah, you'd probably die. I don't know how many of them have like there's.
well,
like,
but that's the thing is that I don't know that I don't know that that's what's going to happen. I just know that there were towers in the last game, and that's all I'm talking about. Is I did some exploration. I tried to deviate from the like quote unquote story mission, which was to go talk in the town. And I'm like, no, I want to explore. I want to see how the world has changed in the last, I think it's like 8 years in game have gone by. And I kept finding things where I'm like, oh, I'd love to set like a fast travel here. Oh, I'd like to interact with this. And I wasn't able to. And it was just surprising to me how like my hands felt tied in that moment. I have a game where like exploration is supposed to be the paramount, but exploration at our pace, not exploration at your pace.
yeah,
Does that make
I don't-
sense?
I mean,
It's just something that I ran up against.
I mean, kind of. I don't know. Like, I play a lot more open world games than you, so like the idea of a game pacing out the mechanics to you so that you can't kind of get away. I mean, like look at Street Fighter and the ways in which they wouldn't let you walk around that open world. Like you couldn't leave that area of the city until you talked to a specific person. Like that's just like open world gaming kind of 101. And some games really succeed at not making you feel that way. And I would say the way that Tears of the Kingdom succeeded for me is like I wanted a glider. Like that was probably because of all of the time that I spent in Breath of the Wild flying around and loving that, and now I had the ability to fast travel to space and jump. I was like, I want a fucking glider. So when the implication was like go to town so that you can get your shit together, I just was like, yes, 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 please. Like I wanted that. I didn't feel that need to deviate yet because I didn't have the tools to deviate yet. Once I had my full tool set, then I was like, peace, and I didn't do the story for like 50 hours. But like doing that without a full tool set just didn't make sense to me. It's like I'm not gonna go camping without my tent yet, right?
Yeah.
Like I just
No, and I get it. It's just I was so excited, and in Breath of the Wild, it's once you're off of the plateau, the world is open up to you. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's open up to me, and then it'll happen when it happens. Like I don't know, it'd be one
it
thing.
was 2 seconds later, right? Because like you land off of the plateau, then you walk to town and you're handed a glider. So it was kind of that moment for me.
There's 2 missions before you get the glider, but still, because I was like with friends playing the game.
But what is a mission? Is a mission talk to this person on the other side of the fence, or is a mission like go out into the world and do something?
You had to go out into the world. You had to go to Hyrule Castle before you're given your glider.
But Hyrule Castle is like 10 feet outside of town.
Yeah, but you still have to. There's a mission that you have to interact with, where you don't get the glider. I'm not.
I understand. What I'm saying is, I'm pretty sure that mission is talk to this person, then go to the center of what used to be town and talk to that person, and then they tell you, I saw some stuff up there, but I don't know how to get up there, so you should go report that back to town. And then you go back to town, and then you're basically back on track. So like, you're definitely shoehorned into some missions here and there. But like, I feel like it's no different in Breath of the Wild than like you can't leave the Great Plateau until you finish this, which they had some of that in this too, where you can't leave that upper island. Like that whole intro set of them setting you up with the tools to take on the world, like Fallout does this by not letting you leave the vault until you get your Pip-Boy and you learn how to use weapons and all of this stuff. Or like I was just playing even to that point, something like I was just replaying Final Fantasy VII, and that idea that like they keep you in Midgar for the first third of that game until you can learn to then roam the world out there and grind out on the world map. Like open world gaming starting with a bottleneck in order for you to kind of learn all of your shit is like important for like teaching gameplay. And like and again I think that like good games will not make you feel that way, but also like games that are your style are not going to like basically like this game is not jiving with you on a very basic level. That isn't a Tears of the Kingdom problem, it's a video game problem that you're having.
I think specifically with Tears of the Kingdom, I don't mind the bottlenecking. I knew that was going to happen. I didn't expect for the neck of the bottle to be quite so long.
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying like I had a glider in my hand in the first hour, so like I don't know, like you,
like I'm like I was specifically one of those things where because I felt like in Breath of the Wild, all I did was go where I was told to go. I thought that maybe my dissatisfaction with that game was the fact that I was very like mission story oriented with how I approached the game. I never really let myself have those moments where I stopped to smell the flowers and explore the world around me, because I always kind of had a goal, like go to this divine beast, go to that divine beast, and then like
yeah. But like, the trick is like using your intuition to figure out when you should be doing one or the other. And like again, not having a full tool set is a pretty big sign that maybe you shouldn't just go off exploring yet. Like, you know, it's cool when games will let you do a little bit more at a time when you kind of slowly start to build your tool set up. I think there is some of that in this game, but at the end of the day, that idea of just completely going off path and having an issue with the game because they haven't given you your full tool set yet. And again, like you can get that tool set pretty fucking quick. Like as somebody that had that full tool set in a pretty reasonable amount of time, I don't know. Like there are definitely ways to stretch that out if you want to, but if you were feeling like, man, I really wish I could be doing more in this game, then the trick there would be to hop back on the main path until you could. Like, and that's just,
I mean, that's what I eventually ended up doing because of that. But
right.
I was excited to have this big open world before me, and then it was, but then I still got to do like what you're telling me. Like, I want to get to the point where I'm writing my own adventure. And then I did that. I mean, once I got the glider, I went and I filled in my map, and that was fun because it felt like a lot of those were ones that maybe I shouldn't have been doing at the time. Maybe I was there before the game kind of wanted me to be, or like solving the problems with just a tool set, not with some sort of guidance from somebody else. I think specifically like the fire one, the one where like it's a lightning storm and everything around it is set on fire, so it's really difficult to like land in it. I don't know. I had like fun doing those things, and I'm like, all right, so
the what?
One of the watchtowers,
the shrine. Oh,
it's a watchtower.
Towers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the tower. Like I had a fun time with the towers, and I did. You know, on the way to the tower, any shrines I came across, I cleared them. I didn't not enjoy my time with it, but feeling like my hands were tied to so much game before I got the glider. Which you're right.
I guess what's really getting me, and the reason that this is really starting to, is how much you complained about how Breath of the Wild didn't give you enough. You didn't know what you were doing. You were constantly like, I don't know.
No,
so
I don't.
You go from that to then complaining that this was not letting you. I just don't know what you
I just don't like the games. I guess like at the end of the day, I don't like the games. And then it's those sort of things that do it. Because Breath of the Wild, I was more upset that they gave you everything at the beginning. Like that there was no new tools to find. It was just finding new ways to use those tools. I feel like they gave you go to this divine beast. And then once I'm like, oh, so that's what I got to do. This game, though, from the beginning, after you get the glider, the thing is you have to go to these 4 places. And literally those 4 places are the 4 temples or dungeons of this game. And I'm like, I don't want to rush to those yet. I want to explore and enjoy. So I knew where not to go because of that, which was interesting. But then when it came time to like, well, everybody seems to be like zeitgeist popularly completing temples, I went and I started to do the temples. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you were the only person I knew that was actually doing temples at that point, so I don't know. I didn't have anybody to compare it to.
What? You
Like,
had me in 2 temples. That's the only reason I did temples.
Well, you came back at me and you were like, so you finished those temples? And I was like, no, I did like 1 or 2 just because I wanted to get those specific powers. Like I wanted to do the Rito one and the Zora one because I knew like I wanted those abilities. But like beyond that,
yeah, and that's just where it comes from. Is I'm like, oh, okay, people are doing temples now. People have beaten 2 temples. I've beaten 0 temples. Let's go do some temples. And then once I did the temple and you get the powers afterwards, it's like, well, I feel like I'd be a damn fool going along the same line that you said about like having a full toolbox if I didn't focus on completing the temples to have these boosts and these boons. So then I did those 4 right in a row. Like I went Goron, Gerudo, Zora, Rito. And that was fun. I didn't have any problem doing it that way. But then I ran across the problem of the fact that, and I've talked about that one briefly on the show, that every temple is essentially the same cutscene that you see. So the repetitive nature of that way.
I've been doing a second playthrough, and I still don't agree with that.
Okay.
I still think there's a huge amount of differences between them. There are specific lines that get repeated because it's like a song and like you hear a chorus, but like there's definitely different musicians and there's definitely different rhythms to each of them. Like I was just replaying the Gerudo one and the whole thing about how they just feel so guilty because they feel responsible for Ganon and like all of the guilt that's just dripping from their whole storyline and the ways in which and you know I love the way that you're interacting with this princess that's grown up a little bit from when you last met her in Breath of the Wild 2. There's also a lot of that great stuff going on and I adore the ways in which the different races like feel responsible in various ways for taking care of Hyrule, and the ways in which that plays into the ways the different champions like stand up and like choose to stand by Link. Like it's just such a it's a beautiful construction of bringing together these races in a way that like, you know, Ocarina of Time, you just like you run into the Zora, but I never felt connected to them, right? And you're supposed to in that one in a lot of ways because of the whole time mechanic and the ways in which you affect things in the future and stuff like that. But I felt more connected to them in these than I've ever felt it in that one, you know. And then the same for like the Gorons. You meet the Gorons all the time in all these other games, and some of them though they're like straight up enemies, aren't they?
I don't think that the Gorons have ever been enemies in any of the ones that I've played, and that the only one I haven't done is Skyward Princess or Skyward Sword. So I mean, they're always just kind of a race. They're peace-loving rock peoples. I don't know. I can't think of one where that's like that.
Yeah, I don't know. My point is this.
Yeah, but
they connect to the story is different than the other people's. Like the ways in which you interact with the Gorons in the past is nowhere near as like intricate to like the ways in which you get involved with like their royal lineage in both Breath of the Wild and this one. And like there's stuff going on there that is just so much like it's such good like set dressing and meat on the bones for stuff that has always been in the Zelda series, but this is just like literally like fleshing out like history, like hundreds of years of history for these peoples in a way that you know people have been able to like kind of piece together over the years, and then you know books come out with like the Hyrule like encyclopedia and things like that give you some bits and pieces, but it's never just been just like on display for you like it has been in these games.
Yeah, I don't know. That just felt very repetitive, and I think. And I know it's me, right? Like, everybody's experiencing it differently. But that just was like, oh, now I have to watch this cutscene again. But I do want to watch it in case something has changed. And, like, yeah, there might be some textual clues or where it shines through. But the main story is the same. And from a narrative standpoint, it makes sense why the story is the same. Because it is the sage of old telling the sage of new, like, why they have to do what they're doing and their part in it. But, like, from a gameplay standpoint, because I had like loaded them up to all be experienced one after another, it just felt repetitive. I didn't get like to forget and then get to experience it again. So, I mean, that's part of my way of playing the game. I'll be the first person to admit it. But then thinking about it, and sort of something that I've been seeing with stories is that they do that, like from the narrative perspective, is things that can be repeated are just repeated instead of like a little bit of the story being told and then a little bit more. Like, I wish... I'm thinking, and again, this is going to go back to my favorite Zelda game, which is Link to the Past, which is every daughter of the sages has this part of the story to tell. And if you save the third one before the second one, there's a part of the story that you don't know. It's...
I don't even remember the story they tell. I mean, like, I understand that that's in there, but, like, I don't know. Like, that
I know,
doesn't resonate with me. So, I mean, but it's not even that I think it's a bad story. I love the story of Link to the Past, but I don't remember specifics.
Yeah.
So, like...
It's all origin for Ganon and what he did and what the Golden World is. I don't know. It's just... like, it's one of those things where, like, that is cool to me. And it's cool that you're not linked to doing those in a specific order to get the story. Each one tells a different part of the story, so then by the time you do it...
I mean, isn't that like the memories?
That's exactly what I was going to say, but then this game has kind of taken that and put it into the memories, which, again, made me feel very happy by the time I had found all of those and found the story through them. But, like, if I had been doing those and then getting the temple stuff, maybe it wouldn't have felt the same way. By the time I was doing the memories, which was after having beaten the 4 temples, it felt good. Like, it felt good what the story was and how they did it. So I went from the disappointment of the temples having essentially the same cutscene with a different narrator to the memories telling this narrative and, like, oh, you found the last one first? Too bad that you're lost.
Like, amazing that this game has this option in for you, because you didn't have to do the temples. You could have at some point said, man, these temples are not really doing it for me. I'm going to go do the memories instead because those were fun. And then, like, you could have been having a good time. And, like, the idea that, like this game had that built in, had that waiting for you, and you were doing something else that you weren't enjoying. And again, I don't quite understand what drove you to keep playing a part of the game.
Because I wasn't enjoying them, but I knew that they were something I had to do. So why would I not get through my broccoli before enjoying my beef?
Because you don't have to do that, Dev. It's a game that you're playing. It's a one-player game of your own choosing.
Okay, but if eventually I have to go do the temples, right? I mean, true, you don't have to.
No, you don't have to. You can also choose to not play at some point. Like, that's what I mean. Is like this weird drive to have to, like, get through this stuff when people have spent 200 hours in this game and not even, like, played the story. There are people that are just fucking around with the fuse mechanics. There are people out there that are just exploring the world. There are people out there trying to collect 999 Korok seeds before they do anything else. There are so many different ways that you could play and approach this game. And this idea that, like, you would tie yourself to one is what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around. Because when I was not having fun at a moment in this game, and the same for Breath of the Wild, if there was ever a moment where I was like, this is getting a little tedious for me, I just didn't do it. I mean, did you collect a 999 Korok seeds?
No. No, why would I do that?
Exactly.
Like, that's ridiculous.
You have the ability to do that, Dev. Clearly, there's a line for you.
Okay, but no, but that's not what we're talking about. That is clearly a side quest activity. The temples, as they were presented, was the main drive of the game.
But like, more than any other game, I think it's been made very clear 100 times. You don't have to complete those temples to complete the game.
Right,
you knew that better than anybody. You were the first person to tell me that you just randomly stumbled on Ganon. You could just go fight Ganon.
Well, you can't go fight Ganon. You have to beat his demon army, and then you fight the bosses of the temples. Mm-hmm. You have to go through all that stuff. So then it's like, well, if I do it in the temple, fight the bosses there, then I can be done. I don't have to do that downstairs.
It can be done this other way.
It can be done, yes. It's a possibility, but, like, it wasn't, like, I felt so good that first time I defeated with 4 hearts the army of the Demon King. Like, that was such a great moment. I felt so good in that moment. Right. And then, you know, the friggin' ice dragon shows up, and I got it to half health, and then it killed me with one hit, and I'm like, okay, so that feels like a boss that I just fought. So I'm gonna go deal with that.
Yeah, but you don't need to complete the temples to get your hearts and your weapons and your armor up.
No, but I don't know. And another thing is that, like, I don't love that the place, the traveler's badges, that feels real deep in the game too.
What's a traveler's badge?
Yo, see, there you go. A traveler's badge, by what you talked about earlier in the game, like full toolbox. That is a placeable fast travel point.
Oh yeah, the fast travel thing you get on the pyro pad. Okay, I didn't know that's what they were called.
Yeah. They're called traveler's badges. You have
I
up to
didn't
3.
get those. I didn't get those until I was going into the castle. I was that's not true. I was trying to complete costume sets, and so I needed to be able to fly around a lot. And so I needed something, and I talked to Robbie because I hadn't filled it out yet because I wanted to know what that last tool was too, and all that shit, and that's when I got all my stuff together. But yeah, the traveler's badges, I fast travels, were super useful once I had them, and they were cool. And now in the future, I think I will make sure I get those like earlier.
Yeah, I mean, so I had gotten down to the Army of the Demon King, and then there's no fast travel point there. So the big thing for me was I don't really want to leave because I'll feel like I lost the progress I got to get down here. I could fast travel away, but then I would have to walk back down again. So then I found the broken traveler's badge, which is like, if this were working, we could use it to fast travel anywhere we want to. And I'm like, oh, that's cool flavor text. So like, I kept wondering when that was going to happen. So I kept talking to Robbie because I found it in one of his old laboratories, and he would just have the same thing. And then when I finally beat a temple, that's when he's like, all right, I'm moving over to Kakariko Village. You should see me in my lab there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like, that tool is locked behind completing a temple. So like, it's again that like, and I know that the game is going to have, you know, carrots for each of the sticks. I get that there needs to be small rewards, but it was another bothersome thing where, like, if I had that available at the time when I was, like, going and exploring, I would have enjoyed that more. Like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I know why you gatekept it, but because you gatekept it, I felt like you wasted my time, game.
I mean, like, you're talking about the entire, like, you're talking about carrot and stick, and the carrot and stick of this game just didn't work for you, and I understand that, but the solution is not for the game to just have no carrot and stick mechanic, because then it's not a game. Like you just said yourself, you didn't like the ways that Breath of the Wild just gave you everything up front, but then you didn't like the ways that this one doled it out. You don't like these styles of games.
I don't like these styles of games. I mean, end of the day, this is not. And then that bums me out because, like, I really liked Zelda games, I thought. And then it's a question of, like, are these Zelda games?
Well, but you haven't liked a Zelda game since they went 3D. And I hate to tell you, they've been 3D longer than they were 2D now.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, like, do you like Zelda games?
I like the 2D ones. I really like the first one on NES. I like the Super Nintendo one. You know what? Honestly, I like those two. Those are my two Zelda games. If I like really had to talk it through, I love the NES one. Like, getting to know that game and learn it has a lot of love for that.
I've never been able to get past the first 5 screens, whatever the initial screens are. I've never been able to figure out how that game works.
That is, I mean, it's a thing that, like, in the pandemic, I'm finally going to get good at this. Like, I know how to, like, mess my way through it. And then somebody, Infidelity is the name of the guy who does the hack. He ported it to Super Nintendo. So I tried the first build of that and was able to beat the game 98% from memory. The one thing I looked up was which gravestone it was to find the magic sword. I'm like, I know everything else. I don't know which gravestone to push. And I don't want to die here pushing gravestones. Like, I'm down to 2 hearts. I just want to get the sword and then, like, be able to move on with the game. Like, even going through Death Mountain in the original NES Zelda and, like, remembering that map. And that dungeon is a bear. That dungeon is a piece of garbage until you learn it. Like, the way that it loops in on itself and the thing. I love that dungeon now. And the fact that I was able to master it the way that I did made me really happy. Especially since that was the first time I beat it without having the all key that unlocks all the doors. So like I had a finite amount of keys, and at any moment I might like be out of keys and could no longer be able to progress. Like so like that one felt good.
And that wouldn't be gatekeeping to you in some weird way?
No, because you can go buy more keys.
Yes, just like in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, you can go and do more stuff. There are other things you can do.
There's too much stuff. It's overwhelming. Overwhelming, too much stuff.
And there it is.
Not really.
The games are too big and they're too overwhelming for you, and that's and
no,
I can appreciate that.
It's not necessarily that. I get bored. I get tired. Like you say, you can stop playing at any time. Once I got like certain amount of stamina and health, I'm like I'm done with shrines. Like the shrines I find are fun. I'm still not annoyed with it. I don't want to look for them anymore. I want to focus on completing the game and the narrative of the game. And then, like, the cool thing was after I beat those 4 temples, the way that I, spoilers, I'm going to say it here, found out that there was a 5th sage, though I was kind of feeling there was going to be one because, as I believe we said here, you didn't have a ring on your middle finger yet. And you had seen a character that, like, well, there's 7 people there.
Well, they constantly kept talking about the 7 sages. And
yeah.
So like that just it had to yeah.
So like
no,
I'm
the game does not really shy away from the fact that there's a 5th one. It's just that the ways that the ways that the game pushes you, it really does kind of imply 4, 4, 4, and then all of a sudden, oh my god, there's a 5th. But like it's not really that big of a twist if you've been paying attention.
Right. And I know some people who the 5th sage was the first sage that they found. And like that's so cool to me.
I found the temple, but I never found the thing in the sky, which sets the whole thing off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I had found the temple, and that was the other thing. The other reason why I always knew there was a 5th sage is that I had actually found the temple when I was exploring the depths really early on. So I always knew that the spirit temple was down there. I just didn't know how it was going to connect to everything. Yeah. And then I found separately, like 40 hours later, found the construction site and had started that not knowing the two were connected. And if I had known, I would have finished the construction site so that I could have, but yeah. But there's just that there's so much. I mean, at the end of the day, there are videos of people running to Ganon and finishing this game in 20 minutes, just like there were with Breath of the Wild.
I think
so, like,
43 is the best right now.
Right,
yeah.
But like this idea that like you can get through those in that way, the way that you were playing was not necessarily wrong. The only wrong way to play these games is to not have fun. So if you are doing anything in these games, if there's anything I can tell anybody that is embarking on their journey, because that's the other thing, is I also know people that have just started playing that game this week. Like, so that this is not going to be the last that I am going to be interacting with this game at all this summer. But like the only wrong way to really approach these games is to continue pushing yourself to do something you're not enjoying doing. Because there's a million other things to do in these games that if you just enjoy just running around catching bugs, just go catch bugs. That's totally fine. And Secret probably pays off. Like, that's the other thing. It's not just like you can just do whatever you want, but like there's no reward for it. There's a reward for everything in this game. Anything that you do, there's going to be some NPC out there looking for you to collect something for them. There's going to be some armor set that requires a certain amount of stuff. You know, like I found myself just going around, just going into caves and mining because like I just kind of really enjoyed doing the caves, finding the booble frogs, taking out a couple of like the likes and things like that. And like all of a sudden I realized I had 300 amber on me and I was able to like upgrade a whole bunch of shit because I had all of this extra ore and shit on me. Not to mention then when I found the Don and you could like feed them like other things in order to get different gems and stuff. I was like, God, hot damn. Like it paid off for me to just kind of not play like what the game, you know, what I considered the game telling me to do. But like, that's okay. I'm going to go do my own thing for right now. I left those motherfuckers in town looking up at Ghost Zelda in the castle for what must have been 30 hours. At some point, I had done all of the temples. You go back to town and they're like, oh my god, Zelda's up there in the castle. You should go in and see what's going on. And I was like, nah, I got other armor sets and stuff I want to build up first before I go into the goddamn castle. And like, I must have, every time I flash traveled back to that town, everybody's just standing there looking up at the castle going, I wonder what's going on.
Yeah, that I'm just like, well, maybe that'll be something fun. And then it was just go to point, beat up guys, go to point, beat up guys, until legitimately the fight against Phantom Ganon in there was a good time, but mostly because of the solve of how to use gloom weapons without it hurting you. I loved that. By fusing it to like a little stick, so then suddenly I have like 80 power weapons that are not hurting me because I'm not technically touching it. That was a blast. Like, there are moments that were a blast for me.
I also had the gloom suit from being down in the depths for so long, so I also was pretty well.
Yeah, I have 2 pieces of that, and I had fun doing that. Like, I never finished the depths. I'll be completely honest with that. I'm like, I have enough of it, and it just got so annoying to me personally, coming up against the wall, and the solution was go back to the surface and find another hole to fall down. Because you're never going to pass this wall.
So how much did you figure out about the relationship between the upper world and the depths? Because it's a 1-for-1 map if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that part because, like, above one of the Colosseums is the tree and things like that.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, literally the landscape is 1-for-1. It's just reversed. So if there's water up above, then that's a wall below. So if you are up above, you can even tell, like, okay, I want to be able to get to this thing in the depths, but there's this water here and this water there, which means I know, even without unlocking the depths map, that there's walls in the way. It means that I need to go look for this there. And once I figured that out, and once I figured out that the higher a thing was up here, the lower it would be down there, and vice versa, like, once I kind of figured out the reverse physics of the map, I got through the depths in like 2 hours. I figured out how to find all of the stuff that I wanted down there.
Yeah, I did. I beat the Yiga clan thing that teach you all about that, and then I'm like, I'm done with the depths now. I'm not having fun with it anymore. So, like, there were definitely moments where I walked away from things that weren't fun, but when it's something that seems central to completing the game, a la the temples, like, I'm like, well, I'm going to get them done, and then they're done, and then I won't have to do it again. And that's the end game for me, is to complete the game.
I actually finally just tried in Breath of the Wild a run without doing all of the divine beasts, because I just was fucking around in it, and I have a save in that's like a silly save that I've been playing like 200 hours in, where I just, like, the first thing I did was unlock all of the towers before I even talked to anybody else, that kind of thing, right? And like one of the things I was like, well, I haven't done any of the divine beasts yet. And I have 18 hearts. I wonder if I could just go to Ganon, because as far as I know, the only difference is in that one at the time, like, I was like, they don't take off that extra health. But I'm pretty confident I can take his health down, and I did pretty good. Like, I didn't end up completing it. If I had the divine beasts, I definitely would have beaten Ganon. But like, I was pretty proud of the fact that I was like, I almost finished him without getting a single divine beast. That felt pretty good. And I feel like, I know you can do that same thing here, right? It's just easier if you don't.
Right.
So like, that's, I understand that it's like that drive, that it's making you feel like you want to do that. I never once hit a moment where I wasn't. It's not that I didn't hit moments where I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I definitely did. It's just that when I did, I was like, then I'm not going to do this, and found something else to do. And there was 1,000 other things to do. So I just never once felt the need to continue doing a thing in this game that I didn't want to be doing.
And that's cool. I'm happy for you on that. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I was trying to say about the fifth stage. The only reason that there was a fifth stage was after defeating the army of the people underground, the demon army, fighting the bone dragon. Once I had beaten the 4 temples, I'm like, well, my first stop, now that I can lay a traveler's medallion down there, maybe medallion, maybe badge, down there, so I can always fast travel back, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to see what happens when I beat the army now. And there was a fight against the, like, corrupted construct. And I'm like, oh, so there's got to be other bosses upstairs that I still haven't beaten. And because that fight was a monster without having the actual construct with me.
Yeah. If you hit her with the lightning from the Gerudo princess, if you use her lightning ability, it knocks it out pretty good.
Right, but then you got to move it over to the wall. And I just didn't have anything that could do that.
I had a cobble crusher that I would just like do a what do you call it, swing on. a stamina swing with, and basically after the second hit, it would go flying back.
So what I had been doing was I would lightning to stagger, and then I used the Goron to drive it back, and I shot him out of the arena, and he couldn't come back. The time I got the furthest in that fight against her
not you, him. That like he would.
I'm just like,
I was always shooting him just off into nothing because he was annoying me. I was like, you know what, you're going off into the ocean now.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is the one time that I need you though. So then it made me. That's why I went and did the memories.
If you took the ring off and put it back on, because taking the ring off, and put it back into the ring, and then putting it back on, he would reappear right next to you.
Yeah, I should have done that. Didn't think about it. Did not. Well, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if that would work. I don't know if that would work because in the fight against the demon army, it's not his.
And that's how I got him back. Is I would take his ring off and he'd come flying back, and then I'd just put it back on and he'd appear next to me. I had to do that mechanic a lot with him.
Right, but in the demon army fight, it's not his projection; it's him.
Oh.
So I don't know.
I thought you meant in the temple. You were
no. In the temple was fantastic. The temple was great. I enjoyed that. No, in the fight in the Origin of the Gloom area, the actual NPC is there, and he disappeared, and I'm just like, I don't know how to get him back.
Yeah, but you can hit as hard as him if you've got a heavy weapon.
Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting that fight. I thought I was going to go fight Ganon, or Ganondorf, so that the Master Sword would actually mean something. I wasn't expecting another thing there. And it was cool. Like all of my real fun was trying and hitting my head against the wall of the demon army, and then like learning things about the game that way. And then it's like, well, now I have to go do these things in order to come back to that, which is why, yeah.
That's awesome. Like that's fantastic.
That was the loop that worked for me. But then some of the things that I had to do in order to make that progress, I didn't enjoy. I had a real issue with the Gibdo Queen fight because there were times where what you were supposed to do just didn't work.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, all right, that's how I attacked the hive. And I know that the hive is open because it's producing Gibdos. Why did the lightning not do anything to it?
I mean, it has to be glowing purple.
Oh, it was glowing purple, Siegen. I hit it, the lightning struck, and I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know why.
You were letting the circle get big enough, and it was engulfed in the because it's like a sphere, right?
It grows out from her, yeah. And I was making sure
had that issue. So
it was just like the first time I did it, I'm like, I almost got this done, and then that happened, and I'm just like, that was just like jank. That was a jank mechanic right there, and I'm not super happy about it. And it would happen, and it happened a couple of times.
Glitches can definitely ruin a good day. That's a wild one to get, considering that's actually my favorite boss, and I found a couple of different variations of it down in the depths that I have been fighting, because the big Gibdo wings I then put on the end of sticks, and that's what I use instead of Korok stuff. Instead of Korok leaves.
Very cool. I love it. I mean, I was like, this is a cool. Of the temple fights, I think that was my favorite temple fight. The thing that was just disappointing about it was that fact that, why didn't the mechanic work that one time? Why? What the heck?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really ever have it happen, so I don't even know what could have. Maybe your arrow landed in a weird place or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And that was, and even then, I remember that fight because of it. The Ganon fight, the Ganondorf fight, sorry, it's a Ganondorf. He's Ganondorf. He's not technically Ganon, which I think is a missed opportunity in a lot of ways because they do not tie Ganondorf to the Calamity Ganon and all of the things that happened there. Or maybe they do and just...
They do. Yeah, there's this idea that the basically the cork on Ganon in this game is weakened because of the calamity and the malice from the first game, and because of what happens in the first game, and then inevitably the presence of Zelda and Link is what basically allows Ganon to come out this time around.
Okay, I got that sort of. That's sort of what I figured it was going to be, but there was never anywhere that explicitly said it. And like it'd be cool if Calamity Ganon was him like trying to release his spirit, if it said something like that. I mean, I don't know. I was expecting.
So in Breath of the Wild, you learn that the reason that the calamity even exists is because Rome and his scientists and Hyruleans and shit like that were messing around with stuff that they were discovering with the ancient stuff.
Yeah.
And by messing around with that, they realized that they unlocked something, but they aren't sure what. And then if you actually go down to the bottom of the castle, in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a basement room that is the only room present in Tears of the Kingdom that's not present in Breath of the Wild, that has a stone in it that if you read it, it gives that like, we build this castle here to protect the evil beneath. Like there's like this whole like thing on it about why the castle was even built there in the first place. And if you combine that with what you know about them fucking around with the stuff, with the ancient stuff in the first one, which is what popped Calamity Ganon, then you understand that what they did is they released the seal on Ganon beneath, and Calamity Ganon was basically like the gas buildup around Ganon's body, that and so it is basically like all of the shit that has been like floating around him that you see in this, that is like the produced by the gloom that you see in this, it all connects in that regard.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like one specific room in the basement of the castle that if you find that has this like one weird bit of information that combined with information that from Breath of the Wild basically explains what like how they connect.
That's cool, because I've been looking for something like that, and I'm happy to hear that something like that exists. Thank you, Sejun. Because it is one of those things where I'm like, it is, because he's specifically Ganondorf. He's not Ganon. He never becomes the pig monster. He becomes something else, but we're about to get to that discussion point for me and where I came in with that. Because the thing that was most disappointing to me was that I took down Ganondorf on my first try. I will admit that. Like, and that's weird, right? Because you should feel powerful, but I made sure not to. I only had the first row of hearts. I didn't have anything in my second row of hearts. And I didn't have like a bunch of food or anything like that. I just kind of brute forced my way through it. And because I had one piece of armor that was at level 4, like he was not doing a bunch of damage to me. And then like after the fact, I'm like, man, like it kind of sucks that even I, not feeling like overpowered, was able to beat that in one try. Because I never get to have that conversation that you kind of have with a final boss. Does that make sense? Do I sound like a crazy person?
I mean, you sound like you're bragging about.
That's not what I'm trying to do, though.
Because not everybody out there has that story. So
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you.
Like I beat him with with half a heart left, and it felt like, oh, I'm really glad that I did that. But like I don't know. I just feel like the fact that the second to final Ganondorf fight part is about dodging and flurry rushing because he can block all of your attacks. Like that was cool, but then I don't know, like it wasn't as satisfying. I'm going to talk about another game that came out and the boss fight there, because I think Gravity Circuit is a game that released this past Thursday. I've been playing it not nonstop, but I beat it on the day that it released, and I'm near the end of it a second time in my second playthrough, trying to like clean up trophies and everything. And the part of the game that I find the least rewarding in Gravity Circuit is the final boss, because the final boss has 5 health bars, and each health bar is kind of a separate section, and there's nothing in between those that like there's no matter what, if you die with 1 hit left on the final section of that fight, you're sent all the way back to the beginning. And it's one of those like it reminded me of the Ganondorf fight, because I was bummed that I beat it all in one go. And then this one, I was never going to beat it all in one go. But like both of those experiences felt like two ends of the spectrum of enjoyable final boss fight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I would say that the end of Tears of the Kingdom, I can't speak to Gravity Circuit. I haven't touched it, but Tears of the Kingdom, at least for me, there was like narrative closure in that fight that was awesome. Like that idea that it was that dodge flurry rush, and I had like the master sword, like, and like I had on, you know, my strength armor and stuff like that, and like had eaten a bunch of food so that I was hitting really hard too. So like I was just like wrecking him in like 2 or 3 dodges and flurry rushes after his whole like snobby ass like you're nothing to me bullshit. But then like, so I beat him in a few moments with that, and that felt super good. And then it rolls into part 3 where he gets so pissed about what's happened that he eats the stone. And I was just like, yeah, and like again, narratively, all of it was just was firing on all cylinders. So like I'm not gonna sit here and say that I didn't find that fight difficult. I actually suck at the parry and flurry rush stuff. I was very proud of how well I was doing in that fight because I never used that mechanic anywhere else in the game. And now suddenly I was in like a boss fight that required it, and I was like, oh no, this is it. I'm gonna get screwed on this boss fight unless I learn how to do this. But luckily I pulled it off, and like that felt good. And like again, narratively, it all made sense. I had the master sword out, and it was like glowing blue. And I had not used the master sword up to that point. I had actually I had actually had a couple of heavy weapons that I just relied on for the Phantom Ganon stuff and for the army up until that point, because those were honestly more powerful than the Master Sword. But they give you the Master Sword at the start of that fight with Ganon, that moment of that fight with Ganon, and I didn't bother trying to see if I could change it. Like it didn't even occur to me to try and change it because it just made too much sense for me to do that. Again, narratively, it all just worked. So like I don't know, I don't think the fight was necessarily the hardest boss fight in the game. I think there are bosses out there that were much more difficult. There are some side bosses that are like insanely difficult. Again, there's stuff down in the depths, like you can find yourself in like Colosseums fighting like 4 Lionel and shit like that. That stuff way more crazy, way harder, way more technically taxing, right? But in a lot of ways, that's kind of the point of the story. Ganon is just so fucking convinced that he's going to be this like all-powerful better ruler for this land, and at every step it's kind of like this great thing that at every step in the story Ganon tries some big power move and he just gets slapped down by somebody that he considers weaker than him. You know, it happens a couple of times with Raru in the earlier stories. It happens it happens with you in that moment. It happens with Zelda and the whole thing with her in the sky in the final moments of this game. Like there's so many great moments of just Ganon just getting bitch slapped, and it is so cathartic.
Yeah, I'll agree that like it felt, but I was like kind of, I don't know, it. I felt like I had over leveled. Do you ever feel that way when you get to a final fight where you're like, oh, I over leveled, and by all accounts on my side, I had been trying to avoid that.
Only one time in my life have I ever felt that I am overpowered to the point where this game's no longer fun, and that was in Diablo 2 or 3, whatever one that had come out on the PlayStation 4. And a friend, like, I was grouping for the first time with people, and they invited a friend that I didn't, I don't dislike the guy, but this story will probably explain a lot about his character. Is that he came into the group and he immediately was like, "Hey everybody, like thanks for letting me play with you guys. I got a present for you." And he starts like handing this weapon around, and every time somebody gets it, people are just like, "Whoa, what?" And like people are like losing their shit, and then they're handing it off to each other. And so somebody finally like hands it to me. And what it was some hacked weapon that the second it was handed to your character, you got like 1,000,000,000 XP and like all of this extra gold, and you were hitting for 1,000 times, like all of this shit. And it didn't change once you gave up the weapon. That was just now your character. It completely fucked my character in any way because it made any type of loot like run pointless, and anybody that knows anything about Diablo knows that basically is
that's
that
the loop of the game. It's the loop.
Only time I have ever felt overpowered and thought, well, this just ruins this game for me. Generally, I am the guy. I mean, like as the guy that went to every shrine so that I could get as many hearts and as much stamina as possible, right? As a guy that like went out of his way to level up as many armor sets as possible for whatever situation I found myself going into the final bit of the depths, going after again. Like I want to be overpowered because, again, narratively, the story's telling me I should be at this point. Like, I mean, by all accounts, Link should, as the fated hero, be able to go in with 4 hearts and to defeat Ganon, right? And the fact that I can't do that makes me makes me feel like it is my technical abilities as a player are failing. But like, other than that, like, no, I should go into that fight and I should bitch slap him down and I should wipe that smile off his face and I should drive him so insane with jealousy that he decides to completely lose himself to the dragon. Like, all of that is exactly how it should play out, as far as I was concerned in those moments.
Yeah, I guess narratively it all made sense, but it was just one of those, oh man, like I had been kind of gearing up for it. I've been building it up in my head with like all of the things before it that I had like tried to do, starting at the 4 hearts and realizing it was too hard, and then going in there with like 12 hearts and getting my ass handed to me by the construct and being like, well, I probably wouldn't have been able to begin anyway.
If you want fights like that, that's the thing, is right. Is like it sounds like you're really much approaching this game in a lot of ways like a Dark Souls game, but up to and including the
not even really. I don't know,
but like from that, there are ways to play this game that way, and it's the depths. The Colosseums, the boss fights that are down there, and like there's all of this stuff down there that, again, much more like technically taxing than that fight with Ganon, and much more rewarding in the ways in what you get when you do defeat those things. The amount of shit, the amount of resources, the types of resources you get. Like, you want that kind of action. Tears of the Kingdom has that kind of action. It's just not the narrative storyline that's giving it to you. Like this attachment to the narrative of this game that you seem to have had as you played it is, I think, the thing that really was your downfall in because it sounds like you enjoyed all of the things you were doing that didn't have to do with the main storyline in this game, and I would say that's totally fine, because there are, as I said, plenty of people out there that have put hundreds of hours into this game and have never touched the story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me it was the fact that I'd be doing something fun and then I'd come up to a limitation, and it felt like the only way to pass that limitation was to go do one of the things the game was telling me to do. And then it got to the point where I'm like, well, I don't want limitations when I'm doing the fun stuff, so I'm just going to do all the things the game keeps telling me to do until it stops that. And then at that point, I'm like, well, now like I don't have any drive to keep playing this game. I like weirdly paced it out for myself wrong. I don't know. I mean, I had fun moments in this game, but I don't think I'll remember it. It's nowhere near top 10 lists for me games this year, which is weird because I gave it 90 hours of my time, which even that was a surprise when I went to see how long I'd been playing the game after beating it, to see that I'd been playing for 90 hours or more. I'm like, it doesn't feel like I gave this game 90 hours of my time. Which, at the end of the day, that's awesome. That's a good feeling. That, like, I didn't get caught up in the hours I was playing in the game. I don't know. I don't know. I'm probably never going to go back to it. I know that. And it kind of bums me out a little bit. But I am, and I'm not.
We've got somebody in the house that's just started it, and they're playing the early parts of it, and now it's got me all itching to start again, so I'm probably going to dive back in a bit. We just need to now figure out how we're going to balance trading off the copy of the game.
Right. Which is the issue. Which is why the decision yesterday was decided that we're going to get 2 copies of Super Mario Brothers Wonder for the house. Because I just want to beat that game, and then I'll gladly play it with other people. But then the other people in the house who would be playing it are like, I just want to play it on my own too, and then do it co-op. And I'm like, well, I mean, we could try trading off, but we could also start at the same time and go that way. So that's what the gaming budget saving is going towards, is 2 copies of that game for release date. Nice. Should be fun. I don't know. I'm excited.
Yeah, a Super Mario RPG is the one that I'm budgeting for, so that's going to be
I'm excited for that,
Wonder
too.
is one that I do want to play eventually, but I mean, like, it took me 5 years, I think, 6 years to play Mario Brothers U.
Right.
Whatever version of that that you want to talk about.
Well, I'm hungry for a new Mario game. Like, I gotta find my copy of Yoshi's Island, because it is the only Mario platformer that I've never finished to now. Like, and even then, is it a Mario platform or is it the start of the Yoshi stuff? But it is Super
it is
Mario World
considered
2.
Super Mario World, yeah, it
Yeah,
is
so
considered Super Mario World 2. So
I've never finished it, and I probably should. And there are friends who have asked me to, especially with the amount of times that I've now finished the Lost level Super Mario Brothers 2. Like,
Yoshi's Island is just like silly. Like that's my big thing with it. After playing Super Mario World, like it's just so much sillier than Super Mario World is, and that's the only way I can put it. With like the ways that you like transform into vehicles and like there's all and the villains the like the the baddies in it are just like much goofier. The style is much goofier. So like it was the reason that game has never clicked for me is that when I first approached it was when it first came out, and I approached it as Super Mario World 2, and I was like, this is not Super Mario World 2.
yeah, it's the issue for me now, because when I played it as a kid, I enjoyed it because it was a rental. So I'm like, I only have the 5 days to see how far I can get, and I only have 2 days if we're being honest, because I rented on Saturday. I have it Saturday, Sunday, and then like after school Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday when it needs to go back. Mm-hmm. So like those days I'd get there, but then like I got through to the start of the 4th of the 6 worlds in that game, and I'm just like, I'm not going to have the time to play it the same way. And then every time I try to play it as an adult, the levels are just so long. Like they feel so long.
Yeah,
compared to other Mario games. Like,
well, I think it's a lot to do with the movement. I don't think that the platforming in this platformer is particularly good. It's hard for me to talk about this game because, as I said, I've got this really strong bias. I approached it really young in a way that made me not like it then. So of course, like my whole life, I've just never been able to really come around to it. Meanwhile, there are people out there that adore this game, and like the platforming in that game though is not the kind of platforming that I engage well with. Mario, like Super Mario World, yes, like the run, jump, the further you run, the further you jump, like that kind of like the slippy, slidey mechanics that you sometimes get in Mario games, the bounce off the walls, all of that sort of stuff, right? I adore that, and that's not how you play Yoshi's Island.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's 100% what it is for me. Is that it's such a shift from what I know in a Mario game. Like the aiming of the eggs and everything, like that projectile is such a big part of the game and being successful in the game.
Well, and then you start figuring out like weird like pool shots because you can bank it in certain ways so that it goes around corners and things like that.
Yeah, like it's just a different style of game, and one that unfortunately never really jived with me. And I gotta say, I am happy to hear that it doesn't jive with you either. Because I couldn't take one more game where it's just like, you're just playing it wrong, Devin.
No, I think I have played that game correctly, and I can admit that that's just a game that just doesn't work for me. So I don't really approach it too often. When they announced that was one of the ones going up on like Nintendo, on the Super Nintendo emulator on the Switch, I was like excited to see if maybe something had changed, but I got 20 minutes into it and realized nothing had. So not changed in the game, obviously, but changed in me, and I just realized, nope, I still don't like this game. So you know what I did? I stopped playing it.
Yes. But I'd like to. There's another part of me that does like to complete like series of games so that I can see how it went from 1 to 2. And there are some games that I've completed in series that it made me super happy. Like the Legend of Zelda, Adventure of Link, Legend of Zelda 2. That game is a monster to play. But once I finally got past the Nintendo hard, so you'll buy the game, not just rent it section of the game, which is Death Mountain. Once you get the hammer in Death Mountain, that game really opens up and is a lot of fun. Like, I love that. Zelda 2 would probably be my favorite Zelda game if it had some of the quality of life that we see in modern games. And it's why Infernax, which is very similar to like that, and Castlevania 2 was my game of the year last year. Because it was that same sort of side-scrolling, like, adventure quest. But, you can save.
Yeah. I do think that in terms of like the future for what Zelda does next, I would like to see them do something else. Like as much as I love Tears of the Kingdom, and I will say that like hard pressed to think of another game in my life ever that has me feeling the way that Tears of the Kingdom does. Like I don't know. There's just so much in that game and so much more that I need to go in and discover that like yeah, I don't know. I will need to wait a long time to really come to terms with exactly how I feel about Tears of the Kingdom because right now it is just nothing but perfection because I can do so much in it I don't know. I spent 10 hours, I think, by the time I did the math. I spent 10 hours building stuff to save into the, eventually you get the ability to save
Yeah. Auto build.
blueprints, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, this is perfect. I can do this now, especially if I collect enough Zonite, I can build anywhere, which is like what, so I just started doing that. And after a while, I realized I have just been going around just like in the depths, going from platform to platform, building a thing, saving it, adding to the next one, like and then I had to go around and find enough Zonite. And when I was like, oh man, now I need to like, okay, this one costs like 30 Zonite to build. So I need to make sure I've got at least like 100 on me while I'm up above so that I can do this a couple of times. I built a bokoblin trap essentially that had a couple of beams on the front of it that I basically would just drive around, catch them all up in a cow catcher, and then just like hit them all with a giant beam, like that kind of stuff. And like, it was, I don't know, there's so much in that game that I just adore just doing outside of the game. It's like Breath of the Wild for me, where I played types of Breath of the Wild games where I never did anything story based. I just ran around and, I liked doing towers in that game. I love doing towers in this one. I loved doing a lot of the Sky Island stuff, like the dive games, the mini games where you
those
like
were
dive
excellent.
and then you get the glide
those
suit.
were so good.
Yeah, like, and so what I would do is I would challenge myself to climb up to the tops of those places without talking to the guy, like to escort you up. And I figured it out on a couple of them. And then once I got the pendants that you could leave, it occurred to me that I was like, I bet I could talk to that guy. He'll fast travel me up. I can drop a pendant. And then I'll just do the dive, fail it or make it, whatever, it doesn't matter. But then I will forever be able to get up to, and sure enough, you can do exactly that. So I dropped a pendant up at the top of each of those. For the last kind of like 20 hours of that game, after I had gotten the pendants unlocked, I had these 3 fast travel points that were the highest parts of the map. Except for the wind. I think the wind temple allows you to bounce a little bit higher off of the boats, but that's like the only other way to get higher in that game than I was.
Yeah, and if you get the wingsuit and you level it up too, the fact that you would just do that instead of gliding is incredible.
Right,
and
just
so the control.
I mean, once you have the wingsuit, did you do the labyrinths?
No, I haven't done the labyrinth. I unlocked 2 of them.
So the labyrinths are awesome. The way that they evolve from Breath of the Wild is super cool, and there's, it utilizes the 3 different maps. So there's a labyrinth level in the sky, on the ground, and in the depths, right? Like those are the sky ones. You always have to kind of do these like flying puzzles, and if you've got the glide suit, it's fucking awesome. I got them done in like 2 seconds, just flying around with the glide suit with just a little bit of dipping and diving. Like it made those sections so much fun. And like I'm sure they would have been fun with just the glider too, but like with the glide suit, it felt like it almost felt like I was getting away with something, but not in a way that broke the game. It felt like I was getting away with something the way that I feel like Link gets away with shit in the universe, which is what makes him the hero, right? So I was like, yeah, this makes me feel like the hero. But anyway, like with all of that said, I do think that the next thing that they do with Zelda needs to be something completely different. Whether it's going back to a 2D thing, whether it's doing like a top-down isometric thing like they did with Link's Awakening, like remaking one of the old ones, something. They need to do something that is not this for the next Zelda. And it probably won't be for 5-6 years, but like when it comes, I think it needs to be something different.
Yeah, I think the conversations that I've had about Tears of the Kingdom has cemented for me that there is a grouping of people who are Zelda fans who do not consider Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Zelda games. They are using the characters, but they're so different from what they think of as a Zelda game that, like, you could almost call it a different series. And I'm not necessarily in that. I think that Zelda games, by their very nature, are about evolution and change to the mechanics.
Yeah, I will point out that that's the same thing people said about Ocarina of Time, and in a lot of ways, Wind Waker, and a lot of, like, I've heard that group of people with every Zelda game that's released in my lifetime. But sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, I think it's different here where it's a direct sequel. So, like, it then suddenly becomes, like, the world.
Right? What do you mean by that?
So, like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they feel very similar. To the fact that it, like, Tears of the Kingdom is probably what they wanted Breath of the Wild to be.
Undoubtedly,
Undoubtedly, like it
last week.
Yeah.
Like when they released early like art concepts for what Breath of the Wild was going to be, there were things like the floating castle and the gloom floating around and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, no. So there's definitely a lot of stuff in Tears of the Kingdom that they intended to be in Breath of the Wild, but it never quite made it.
Because, like, look at something like Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask. Direct sequel, same Link, but the two games are very different from each other. Ditto Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. Direct sequel, same Link, very different game from, like, the first game. So the fact that this is the first time that it's a direct sequel that feels kind of just like the first game. There are people who are now really taking that thing that we have heard it our whole lives. Like, this doesn't feel like a Zelda game. And I think that the bigger change there is going the 2D Zelda and the 3D Zelda and how they're different. And that's also an argument I could make for, like, the Mario of it all. A 2D Mario is diametrically opposed to the, like, game mechanics and philosophy of a 3D Mario. Like,
I think game philosophy and mechanics is an interesting thing to differentiate. I feel like that's the only thing that connects those kinds of games. And I feel like there are game mechanics and philosophies in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that are the only thing that tangentially connect them to the world of Zelda. Like with Mario, like the idea of like your jumping ability, right? Like that's how you get around the world. Like there's things that make Mario, right? And the collecting mushrooms and flowers to change costumes and abilities and things like that. Like there's something always kind of at the heart of a Mario game that has that in it, right? I'm gonna put on a different suit and it allows me different powers. Is like pure Mario, right? And that's been true since the beginning and is still true to this day, right? And like in Zelda, right? That idea of I'm going to use tools to approach a problem, and I may not have the right tool to defeat this problem right now, but if I help out enough people in this world by being the hero, by being that guy that helps out the people in this world, I will have access to these better tools that then allow me to help save these people. Is I think an important part of like the story and the game mechanics and the game loop of Zelda, and that's something that is very still present.
Yeah. That, and I don't know, it's just an interesting thing where, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you that it would need to go back more to its roots for it to not.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I said it needs to be something completely different. It could be something completely brand new as well.
Okay.
I just think it can't be this again.
All right,
I don't necessarily want them to go back to just making a 2D Zelda unless they feel like there's something there that they can really get a hand on that's unique and different. Sure, but I don't know if that's what I want either. But I know that it can't be this.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think I keep going to Link Between Worlds. I think that's the name of it. The 3DS one.
On the 3DS that like was beloved, but also you had to have a 3DS to play.
Yeah. Honestly, a Switch remake of that game, I think, would be great to like just put it in the hands of other people.
Yeah.
Right? And even if you do like a 2-pack of A Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds, like modernize those two games for the modern. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Where Zelda goes from here, right? Because I could see Tears of the Kingdom being the end of it, and the sequel just being another one in this style. But I don't know. Like, I do want it to reinvent the wheel. Even though, like, part of the thing that I'm complaining about is how it reinvented the wheel. We'll never be happy as gamers. That is, I guess, the truth of this whole thing. I don't know. I'll never be happy as a gamer.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, I've done nothing but talk about how this game has brought me nothing but joy. So like, I cried at cutscenes, which is the first time that's ever happened in Zelda games for me. Like, I've always loved the story of Zelda games. I think they've been some of the best stories in games I've ever played, and in fact have been the driving force behind me completing even the ones I don't love, like Skyward Sword. God, I don't really love the mechanics of that game one bit, but the story is so good. And that's the other thing about Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Like, anybody that has played any of those other games, there's so much in Tears of the Kingdom, so much in Breath of the Wild that is payoff. When you talk about these other games, there's so much Skyward Sword in these games. There's so much Ocarina of Time in these games. There's so much Link to the Past in this one. Like, with the whole depths being the opposite world of the stuff above. It felt like going into the dark world in Link to the Past for me every time I went into the depths. And the idea that you had to discover different ways to get there, just like you have to discover the warps to get to the dark world in Link to the Past, and how there's various puzzles and mechanics that can unlock other ways to get around them, and like exits and stuff like that. I found my first depth exit like 100 hours into the game. I didn't realize there was a way to ascend through these like light pillars out of the depths. I just was fast traveling out all the time.
I don't think I ever did that. I don't know. The depths was a disappointment to me, is what I will say, because I wanted it to be that, and I don't know.
But you didn't spend any time in the depths.
I mean, not that I didn't spend time. I didn't complete it. I looked around, I found things, I activated a bunch of light routes, but I didn't activate every light route. The same way that I felt compelled to go upstairs and find everything on the top world. That sounded weird.
I don't know. I found myself activating light routes when I found them, but honestly, I was having a blast getting around without it, because I had the mining suit, I had glowing weapons, I had, I actually really early on, did I find it? I must have made it, because I can't believe I would have found this. But I had a star attached to the end of a stick, and if you bring that down to the depths, you don't need shit in terms of life.
Every time I tried to go to a star, by the time I got there, it disappeared. It was very sad. They
disappear in the morning. I don't know.
I'm not mad about it. It was fun chasing them.
Stars in Tears of the Kingdom are so much more plentiful than they were in Breath of the Wild, and at first I was a little disappointed in that, until I realized how useful they were in things like the depths and upgrading stuff and things like that, and I was like, oh, they definitely needed to up the number of these that you could get. And I will say, like, one of the first like moments for me that was like turned me into a kid was when I was diving at night and I caught a star in the air. Like, that was one of the best moments I've had in a video game in a long time. Like I giggled when that happened, completely, organically, just like giggled like a little kid when that happened, like that kind of shit. And I had many moments like that in Tears of the Kingdom, where I discovered something or learned something or talked to someone and something came out that was just like, oh man, that means this and this. Like the pieces started to fall into place of like how you approach things or how I could approach things. And this game was full of everything was a discovery for me in this game, and every discovery did nothing but bring a smile to my face.
Well, I wish I could see the world through your eyes with this game. Because that was not it for me. And now that I'm sad that I didn't do it, but it's almost like a kind of jealousy that's not how I approached it. But then I think at other games that I've been playing, and very rarely do I get there anymore. Like, I mean, I have a Gravity Circuit. I was having a great time until that final boss fight. And what's weird about that is there's a moment, right? It's basically a Mega Man game for anybody who's not like hyper up on Gravity Circuit. I didn't do a big like lead into it on this one because this is the game that I should love by all accounts. It's Mega Man, but with like fighting game instead of like a buster. But you have a hook shot, so you can still kind of play it as a projectile style game, which is how I ended up playing the game, and I had a blast. But like Mega Man, you do a refight, but it is a fight against a character that assumes the powers of the 8 bosses from before. So it's like a 10 health bar fight that you gotta go through in the game. And that was excellent, because after every so many, you got health back. So like it didn't just feel like this overwhelming wall, where the final boss, even with just 5 things, with no checkpoints in there, going back to the beginning, I'll admit an hour of my gameplay in Gravity Circuit is just the final boss. And like that just felt like the other end of what I was complaining about with Ganon, where like, oh, I did it in one shot. And I was lucky in that one shot, but like now I don't really feel any drive to go back to it. I don't know. I really enjoyed my time with Super Mario Lost Levels. I'll admit that. That was something that was satisfying every time I beat another level. Because those levels were always presented as some of the hardest things in the world to me.
Yeah. So, like, my cooldown from Tears of the Kingdom has been all sorts of just, like, silly games. And honestly, I've been having a blast with those, too. I don't know. 2023 is shaping up real good for me because I don't want to ever forget that this was the year that I played Death's Door. I know that it technically came out last year, but so like it was like, and there were a lot of people talking about it last year too. I didn't know what to expect from that game, and I approached it tentatively this year when it was on sale, and like fell in love with that game, and that game was a joy. And then Tears of the Kingdom was a joy. And then like since Tears of the Kingdom, like I've played through the entirety of Storyteller from Annapurna, which was like really, really fun. That was like a one sit down, like 3-hour get through. And it's a logic game hidden in like a fairy tale game. It's really, that one was awesome. I've been playing a fuck ton of Dome Keeper, which was one that came out a while ago that everybody was like all about on PC, and like again, it was on sale this past week in the Steam sales, so I grabbed it and like haven't stopped playing it. Like I've fallen in love with Brotato, Curse to Golf. Like I have been really, really just having a fucking blast with a lot of these smaller games. And again, it's on cooldown from this like 130-hour like 2-month experience I had with Tears of the Kingdom that was also a joy. So like and then I'm looking forward to things like Super Mario RPG later this year and stuff like that. So like I don't know. Even Street Fighter, a game that I never would have guessed I'm like falling in love with. And now there's like some weird like DLC announcements that have come out that got me excited. I'm excited about Street Fighter. How weird is that?
Yeah, and that's my cooldown from Tears of the Kingdom was Zelda, the original Zelda, the port, and then going too hard on Lost Levels so that I could unlock the like special A to D levels. And I've been having a ball with that, and like that's what I did. So then trying to transition to new stuff, Street Fighter 6 still got me. Mark let me hold on to it for another week, and I'm almost done with World Tour mode. Been having a blast with that. Gravity Circuit, I know, like I've already done a second playthrough of it, even though I'm like, I'm never going to play this one again. I've already done that second playthrough, and I can see at least 2 more in my future. So that's cool. That's a cool thing that just is going to be part of everything. I don't know. I do not know. Season. Double Dragon Gaiden coming out on the 27th of this month. I don't know if I'm ready to go back to the world of Double Dragon after the disappointment that was River City Girls 2, but I'm trying.
The one that's got a lot of like shit wrapped around it. Like,
oh, what do you mean?
Double Dragon Gaiden, isn't that the one from like that company that like fucked up the last one?
No, it's from a different company. That's the thing.
It's from a different company. Okay.
So like it's not canonical with with River City Girls at all, because Marion, who was a character in River City Girls 2, is a character in Double Dragon Gaiden, but she's not a melee fighter. She's exclusively looking like she's using a gun and stuff. So like, and that one seems to be perhaps more roguelike, or like an arcade game where you pick your guys and then you try to go through the game. But I'm excited to try it despite what happened with River City Girls 2. And I don't know what's going to happen there. And then I think that's the last one until Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which after all the Lost Levels is what I'm really looking forward to. But I'm gonna eat well off of Gravity Circuit, because there are challenges in it that I want to complete. Like, I want to see if I can do everything. And I finally found other people who are, like, considering speedrunning it, and we were having fun right before the show started. One of the reasons I was a couple of minutes late was I was talking with people that I ran Cyber Shadow with about, like, moves and things that could be done to make Gravity Circuit faster. But again, like, there's the other indie game problem, is they're already on version 1.4 after the release date on Thursday because just glitches that they didn't see until they rolled it out to a wider audience. So it's like, I don't know. At least it was a full, complete story on release date. Unlike River City Girls 2, which was missing like a cutscene. So, I don't know. Things are maybe getting better. It's been a time. It's been a time for gaming. But I will say this: Mario Kart 8, the Fifth Wave DLC, big fan. Lots of memories come flooding back with these ones.
Yeah.
From things like the Daisy Cruiser and the Koopa Coast, I think is the name of it, the water slide one, because those were big in Wii. Those were like Nintendo Wii levels.
Right.
And we would do that's what we would do on Mondays after scenic design class, is we would just sit and play Mario Kart Wii. Oh, on Moonview Highway as well. Just so many memories from Mario Kart Wii, and college came flooding back with the new DLC wave. And I'm very excited for the end, but I don't know who's going to be the last two DLC characters. Because I never had Wiggler on my bingo card.
No, I don't think anybody did. Well, yeah. I mean, like, why would you when there's Wigglers in the game? I mean, same with PD Piranha, I'll be honest. With the amount of Piranha Plant stuff already in the game, the idea that they went with PD is wild.
Yeah.
But there's but yeah, I think there's still hope for somebody like a Diddy Kong. Like, I think that might be something that we see.
I really want Funky Kong, but I doubt it now at this point, with there only being 2 slots left.
Yeah, they might tie it into some releases at the end of the year. It'd be interesting if they're able to score somebody like a Gino or a Malo with RPG, or if there's something in Wonder, like maybe they do
Elephant Mario.
Huh?
Elephant Mario.
Elephant Mario as like a driver, right?
Yeah.
Like I could see them doing that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But they're only the one left. And honestly, the joke has been, how would you feel if they announced Wave 2, like, not Wave 2, but like DLC Pack 2? I'd be all for it. One of the people we were racing with yesterday, because we were able to get on, was like, why the renewed interest in Mario Kart? And it's like, because of the DLC. Like, the DLC makes me want to play Mario Kart again. And then I get bored of it, and then I put it away until more tracks come. And it does not like I just play the DLC. I go play some of the other stuff too. The fact that we did,
this is the same as like with fighting games and with WoW and with all of this stuff that works on this games as service stuff. Like, this is how these games as service like style like work. Like, something comes out for a couple of weeks, everybody's talking about it. Then, like, you know, there are some avid fans that will keep playing in the interim, but then eventually you need to be putting more content out to bring that crowd back. And Nintendo is really, really knocking it out of the park with their first kind of attempt at games as service, which is wild to say, considering how often they usually stumble when they approach these things that are 5 years behind the times. But no, they're really doing a good job with this one. And I don't know, I to that question about like how would you feel if they just announced a DLC Pack 2. I mean, like, first of all, it feels like what we're going to see is in November, they'll announce the last DLC will be out. And by Thanksgiving, we'll be playing the last DLC. And then by Christmas, there will be, like, a full package disc out, right? There'll be, like, the Mario Kart Super Collection, or whatever the hell they call it, that you'll be able to buy for Christmas. That'll have everything in it, right? And at that point, I really hope that we also have some hint that there's a new Mario Kart coming. I don't know how I feel about them just continuing to do this games as service stuff with this version of the game. If they wanted to put out the next Mario Kart, call it like Mario Kart Infinite, and say in perpetuity our plans are just to support this, that'd be cool. This idea that the game that they've decided to kind of hitch their horse to and keep supporting is this already 10-year-old game is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't get our first DLC until the game was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. God, when you think about that, that is kind of nuts.
Right.
Yeah, and
so
it's like,
that's what I'm saying is like I'd rather hear about Mario Kart Party next or Mario Kart Next, whatever that is.
I agree. I think that if they're smart, then it's a release game with whatever the new Switch follow-up is, the new next console from Nintendo, which seems to be something that's in the water, that they are actually working on something. Considering what they wanted to hold Tears of the Kingdom, right? They wanted to hold some game for release on the Switch sequel. That was all in the news. Like it wasn't Tears of the Kingdom, but some other game that like you should have held out to release this once the next generation of the system was out. Oh,
Yeah,
what was
maybe
the?
Mario Wonder or something.
It was some game that they were talking about where they're like, "This is what we were told." So it's like, oh, well, then why would they
I mean,
tell them that?
if
Like,
they were smart, it'd be the new Switch with a new Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey 2, and whatever the next type of Zelda game is, whatever that next world is that they want to get into with that, right? Like Mario, like you have the tie-in classic of Mario Odyssey, right? But you're doing Mario Odyssey 2, and then you also have something that we're all familiar with, but it's a new thing, whether that's Smash or one of the sports games. I think Mario Kart is definitely your best option at this point in time, right? And then for that third one is you have that like completely like this is a risk, but we're taking it with our big franchise, and that franchise that they seem willing to take that risk with nowadays is Zelda.
yeah, maybe Metroid Prime 4. Maybe that's why that keeps getting delayed. They'll take that risk with that. Even though I don't think that'd be the right move, but I
just don't think that Metroid's one of their big hitters. You know, like I know the last one hit really, really well in terms of like critically, and I just don't know if it. I don't think it has the same. I don't think it swings at the same like level as like a Mario or a Zelda, right? But maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe it's just because it's not my type of game.
I don't know. And that's the thing. I just if it's another Zelda that they're waiting for the follow up to the Switch to be on, it's going to be like 3 years then.
No, I no. It's first of all, I think it's going to be probably almost a decade before we see the next Zelda game. At this point, we might see DLC to this one or something, but like, I actually don't know how you do DLC, considering the DLC for the first one was just here's all the shrines we didn't finish in time, and a motorcycle.
Yeah, the people are talking possibilities for DLC. That's been the thing now that it's been 2 months. But even then, I'm like, I don't know if I would want DLC for this
Well,
game.
because like you can't
it's such
really
a
do
big
more
package.
shrines.
Like,
Right, you can't really do more shrines because that would kind of kill the whole finish the shrine quest that you do in this one. If there was suddenly more shrines to do, it's like, well, wait a minute then. And then on top of that, like the motorcycle add-on doesn't work because you've introduced the idea of of vehicle
motorcycles,
mechanics in the main game. Yeah, so I don't know. I honestly have no idea what DLC would look like for this. But yeah, I think it's more likely that we're looking at something like a Mario Odyssey 2 to be the big game that would come out on the next Nintendo.
yeah, that and I think that Mario Kart 9 is probably in the works, of whatever it's going to be, and they'd be foolish not to launch with that because of they see how popular Kart 9 is. And you know what? The third one could be a Smash Brothers, right? And then you're kind of appealing to like the three pillars of Nintendo fans.
I mean, that last Smash is still getting a lot of play, and you know, in tournaments and stuff like that, like and online with the card stuff that they were doing. Not as much as when it first came out, obviously, but it's still up there.
But yeah, but you talk about their games as service model, they really perfected it with the Smash Brothers and the release of the characters. Like that's why we're eating so well now with Mario Kart, is because they took that time there.
I don't think that they did as well with Smash Brothers as you were claiming they did. Like, I stopped buying the packs when the characters were kind of meh. Whereas with Mario Kart, they kind of got me up at front with like you don't really know what's going to be in this, but if you pay this amount now, you'll just have access to all of it for a year. Which I think that was them perfecting it. I think they took a swing at it with Smash and they realized that they had some issues with the ways that they were doling out like new content for that, and they couldn't quite land it. I think Mario Kart is them landing it.
Yeah, I'll agree. Yeah, I was willing to pay up front because I'm like, if this is going to happen and like I know that I'm going to be fed things, like the only reason that fails, like we've gotten 5 of the 6 promised things. So like they would get me again if they did another pack like that. That's right. The real thing is that I am like open and receptive to another pack because they nailed it. It's when they fail in buying something up front because I'm not a big fan of roadmaps. And so much we've seen with gaming, the roadmap that goes unfinished.
Yeah.
Like, look at Avengers.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, specifically for Nintendo and looking at something like Smash, I think where they kind of really kicked themselves, you know, in their own butt. Like, they really started cannibalizing themselves with the whole Mii's and the costuming stuff. It allowed them to kind of get away with, well, we're not going to do the whole character reveal, but we'll definitely put a costume in for your Mii. And that became kind of really disappointing for me because, like, part of playing a new character in Smash for me is learning, like, basically relearning how to play the game because this character plays so differently. But if it's the same character just with a different skin on it, that doesn't change anything for me, right? So like that's not as appealing to me, and so it's kind of why I stopped buying the packs, is because it looked like the focus was more on the Mii costumes than it was on the actual like new stuff going into it. Like that's just a personal thing, but like that's one of those things that like you don't really see that much in the Mario Kart DLC. It's not a lot of like reskinning of stuff that's already there. It feels like there's a lot of work actually going in to, especially with the character stuff that they've been doing with the last couple, to actually change the way that I play the game. Like driving with Petey like has been super fun because like I used to play as King Boo a lot, which was fun, but I never expected to really like get into like the weight mechanics. But something about driving with Petey and trying to perfect the weight mechanics has really clicked for me. And I don't know what it is that they've done with him that works so well, but it does.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Everybody's complaining that the Tim Hortons sign was pulled out of the Vancouver stage that was part of this.
I tried to find anything about that, and I couldn't find fuck all about that. How did Tim Hortons ever let them have it in the first place?
I have no idea. They might have been a deal. But it's now a cafe. And maybe I got scammed or anything like that. But if it's the truth, right? Since you trying to vet me couldn't find it, maybe it's just a lie. But if
I couldn't find anything about them removing it, and like I don't look around at the backgrounds that much, so I don't know. I just
yeah, no, it was just a couple of posts about it, and I would believe that they would put it in there because I know that they tried to make the cities feel authentic. And, like whatever, like even if it's just a red square with white lettering, it would feel like something. But that whole thing, what I was taking away from it was these are not just one-to-one dropping the course from Tour into Mario Kart 8. That some work is being done on them.
Yeah, some work is definitely being done. I still think that the Tour courses are, in terms of technical, like in terms of look, the Tour courses have just like a notch or two below some of the other ones. Like even, and to that point, I think some of the new courses are a notch or two above everything, right? Because they are being created from whole cloth. But like LA has this moment in the new stuff where you go over a soccer field and like or a baseball field or something, the crowd animations in that moment in the field are some of the worst Mario Kart crowd animations since like original Mario Kart on Super Nintendo. Like it looks straight up like 2D sprites, just like I mean it is just 2D sprites just dancing back and forth in a way that is like compared to 2 seconds later on that same exact course seeing a Yoshi sitting on the side of the road and it being like a full 3D model. It's this crazy disconnect between them. And I don't know if it's like maybe like some homage I'm missing or some joke I'm not in on or what. All I can say is that to me, you just hit this moment where it almost looks like the polygons in this particular level just drop. And then all of a sudden they're back again 2 seconds later.
Yeah, that baseball field section of LA is so weird to me because the first time I raced it, I got hit with a shell there, and like the game didn't know what to do. And so like it took like a second it took longer than it usually does to get you back on the course.
Yeah.
So then like
figure out where you were.
Yeah.
Couldn't fish your body out.
So
of
I'm just like,
2D mess.
Great. I'm glad that happened. So then that whole area is just kind of forgotten in my mind because I love that LA course because it is full on rally style. It's not. It's like a big circle as opposed to this section, but now we're going to close this road and open this one. And I really like the levels that are like that. The fact that you end in the LA oil fields is super cool to me. Like it reflects LA in this way that some of the tour levels have not. And that's because like I'm not in Singapore all that often, so I don't know things about Singapore.
But even the Singapore level was interesting. There's been one or two of those tour levels that they've brought out that have just not. What's the one where you go through the park? Is it the New York one or something? I couldn't even tell you what city it is because it's so bland.
Yeah,
but you go through the park like 3 times because like most of the tour courses, you just do the same roads. They just make you turn left or right, right? And like that one was just kind of boring to me. But LA is at least interesting because there's all of that stuff going on. You're right. Yeah, that stuff. Singapore is really fun. What's the The Paris one is kind of the Athens is the one
Athens is
one of
one of the new ones. Yeah.
That one is really weird to me, and I was not joking when we were playing this together yesterday. But like with all of the shit that's been going on lately about like tourists, like mistreating like like the Colosseum and shit like that, to then like release this level where you literally just drive your carts over the relics, was like, this feels a little weird.
Well, we're not in Rome, so that's not the Colosseum, which is, I'm sure, what the argument would be. You're not wrong, though. Like, that's one of those situations where that level works for me because it has one of my favorite styles of shortcuts, which is piranha plant cardboard cutouts that you can break with an item to open up a pathway.
Yeah, that's how the tours do their shortcuts. Yeah, that's how.
So, I mean, I really enjoy that part of it. I was never considering the fact that, like, look at where they're driving. And the other part of that is that, like, that's what Mario Kart is. Like, the Thwomp ruins, we should not be driving in the Thwomp ruins.
Yeah, but the Thwomps don't exist in real life for us to get mad about us getting all over their shit that we literally see in the news today about this idea of like ancient ruins being mistreated by tourists that don't understand the significant value of them. Like that is not a one for one.
Well, until that kid goes on the news
Also,
and says he did it because he saw it in Mario Kart, Mario Kart gets to claim ignorance.
I would argue that in the Thwomp ruins there are living Thwomps around that are pretty actively like
they're mad about it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, I'm not even saying they're mad. I'm saying that I get the impression that they're doing what Thwomps do, but I feel like the Thwomps were at least you are able to consult the Thwomps in a way that you're not.
Yeah, you're right. The Athens level feels the most Fast and the Furious Mario Kart ever has.
Yeah, it's wild the ways in which that one in particular kind of. I think it's because it comes from this idea of the Mario Kart Tour and the idea that you are Mario Karting in the real world is kind of like the bit of that.
Yeah.
And so like to then take that and then do something that in the real world would be. Because at least in the LA levels and stuff, you're driving on streets, right? Like, and even when you jump over like a
baseball field,
you're still going from street to street, right? You're not kick flipping off of an orphanage to get there, right? Like it's really weird. Like,
yeah, and in Vancouver, you go through like the hockey stadium, and everybody's happy to see you. I guess what it is all of the other tour courses have audiences. Like it feels like it's like this big thing where the Mario Kart is in tour is in town this week. So we've closed down these roadways, come out and watch the festivities. Where Athens feels like there's nobody watching this. We just needed a race. Like,
yeah, we set all this up without asking anybody and we're just going to do it.
Yeah, there's no audience in Athens. And because it's so isolated and removed from humanity, it does feel like maybe we're doing something wrong here. Sorry.
It's okay.
Anything to add? Anything else you want to make sure we talk about this week before we send this one away?
You're clearly allergic to episodes running too long, so we should end this quick.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on our big video game special. If you have anything you'd like to say to us about how you're feeling about games, or you want to share any of your thoughts about Tears of the Kingdom, you can reach us online at The Say Report. That's on Twitter at The Say Report. It's also the best way to get in touch with Sejan, since it's the only way to get him on Twitter. He got rid of his other Twitter stuff long time ago, and I don't think he's going to thread the blue sky or anything like that. That just doesn't seem like his style.
I don't even what is that a Twitter thing?
Threads is Facebook's Twitter that came out this past week.
Yeah, no. Why don't we all leave one multi-billionaire megalomaniac for another? No, thanks.
And then Blue Sky is a third option that if you're on Twitter, these are what people are talking about. And even I'm not on Twitter that much. I use it to kill a few hours every day.
Man. He's letting people talk about other businesses on there. I'm surprised that he's not shutting that shit down.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if you want to reach on out to Dev and talk to him, maybe you've also been interested in. I'm going to call it Gravity Rush. That's not what it is.
Gravity Circuit.
Yeah, if you've also been playing Gravity Circuit and you've got some feelings about what's been going on there, reach out to Dev at Devin D. Decker.
I'd love to hear it. It's a good time, and we'll see what goes from there. But until then, William, please take us home. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.